Ding ding ding. Longhu Park is here. Passengers getting off. Please take your belongings and exit from the rear door. Tisk. The doors hissed open. A young man in his early 20s stepped down, a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. White t-shirt, black shorts, tired eyes. It was already past 11 at night. The bus stop was empty. A cool breeze brushed past, carrying that late-night chill that seeps straight into your bones. Bai Ye glanced at the time on his phone and cursed under his breath. Damn it, Zhou Pao be making me work overtime with a whole team. Just because I'm an intern, right? Fresh out of college. Less than a month into the job. And his supervisor had pushed him into overtime for 7 straight days. The excuse sounded nice. Learn faster. Get experience. The truth was simple. Bullying the intern. Another gust of wind swept by. Bai Ye's back went cold. Not from the weather. It felt like something was watching him from the dark. Goosebumps rose along his arms. Whatever. I'll go home, shower, sleep. I've got to wake up early tomorrow. He rubbed his arms, forced himself to look around, then walked into the park. His rented place was on the other side. No nearby stop, so this was his daily route. Get off here, cut through the park, reach home. At night, Longhu Park was too quiet. Streetlights buzzed softly. Mosquitoes danced in the glow. Other than that, nothing moved. He'd walked this path countless times, but tonight something felt off. He scanned the shadows. Nothing. Maybe I'm just exhausted. Bai Ye shook his head, trying to calm himself. To distract his mind, he opened his phone and tapped into short videos. The first clip autoplayed. A pale, exhausted girl sat in front of the camera, speaking fast, eyes bright with panic. Family, you won't believe this. Last night I saw a monster kill someone. A real monster, like the ones in movies.
It was terrifying. Bai Ye almost laughed.
Sure, sleep talk with a camera on. Then the next video loaded and his expression froze. The footage was shot from above. In a residential garden, a massive creature covered in black scales crouched over a body. It had the build of a tiger, the head shape of a bull, and the size of a bear. It was eating. Not acting. Gnawing. Even with shaky quality, one thing was obvious. This wasn't any animal he'd ever seen. Bai Ye stared at the background. A familiar kind of courtyard, the sort you find in city housing complexes. How can something like that exist here? Heart pounding, he opened the comments.
Fake.
AI generated, obviously.
No way.
That realism can't be fake. I believe it. I saw it too. That last comment had a photo attached. A clearer front view. The monster's fangs jutted out like knives. Its eyes were red and hungry. Even through a screen, the bloodlust hit like a punch. More comments rolled in. This is real. Videos are exploding overseas. They say hundreds are already dead. Not just this thing. There are birds as big as cars, and lizardmen taller than 2 meters. What is this world turning into? Bai Ye's fingers went stiff. An absurd thought forced its way into his mind. What if it's all true? He was about to scroll further when his phone abruptly jumped to another video, like the app refreshed itself. He tried to go back. The monster clip was gone. Taken down. Bai Ye swallowed hard. His mind wouldn't settle. Those cold, bloodthirsty eyes kept replaying. Wind rustled the trees along the path. Leaves scraped together in the darkness, where the streetlights didn't reach. And suddenly, his imagination turned cruel. What if one is hiding in there? Watching. Waiting. Ready to pounce. Stop it. Don't freak yourself out. He muttered to himself, shut off the phone, and quickened his pace. Then, a heavy breath.
Close.
Closer. Not a person's breathing. Too deep.
Too thick.
Like a bear breathing right beside his ear. Bai Ye's scalp tightened. His steps slowed, not because he wanted to but because his legs suddenly felt like they'd been stuffed with lead. The breathing followed. Nearer. Nearer. Fear and curiosity battled in his chest until he couldn't take it anymore.
He stopped.
Slowly, stiffly, he turned around. Under the dim streetlight behind him, in an open patch about 5 meters away, a massive humanoid shape stood still, staring at him. It was huge. Like a hulk, skinned alive, muscles swollen, flesh raw and dark. Bone spurs jutted from its joints, sharp and uneven. Thick armor-like plates covered parts of its body, like an exoskeleton. Bai Ye's mind blinked. The pressure of it hit him so hard his legs gave out. He dropped to the ground, palms scraping the path. "I'm done." The monster looked at him, and something almost human flashed in its eyes. Mockery. Then it opened its bloody mouth and started walking forward, one step at a time, like it was strolling toward dinner.
No.
"I can't die like this." The stench hit Bai Ye's nose, thick and metallic. His stomach twisted. But under that terror, something else exploded inside him. A savage, desperate will to live. His shaking legs found strength. He grabbed his laptop bag and hurled it with everything he had. The bag flew straight at the monster's face. Bai Ye rolled up from the ground and sprinted back the way he came. Roar! The monster's roar ripped through the park. One punch. The laptop bag burst apart like paper. Then it charged. For something that huge, it moved too fast. One of its strides matched 2 or 3 of Bai Ye's. Footsteps thundered behind him. Closer. Closer. A shadow swallowed the light. Bai Ye sensed the movement and risked a glance back. The monster was right there. Its right fist was already raised, muscles tightening, ready to smash down. Bai Ye's blood turned to ice. That punch. I won't survive it. Staring at the fist that was bigger than his head, Bai Ye knew one thing for sure. If that punch landed, it wouldn't be bruised and swollen. It would be scattered pieces. He didn't even have time to think. He twisted his body and tried to dodge, but he was still a fraction too slow. The next second,
boom.
The monster's fist smashed into Bai Ye's left shoulder. Bai Ye felt like he'd been hit by a speeding car. His body lifted off the ground, flew more than 10 meters, and crashed hard onto the lawn. In that instant, Bai Ye finally understood what people meant by pain so bad you'd rather die. The agony pinned him in place. He couldn't move, couldn't even crawl. All he could do was watch the monster stride toward him. So this is it, am I dying? He'd barely started his adult life, and it was about to end in a park, at midnight, like a joke. Bai Ye forced himself to look up. The monster loomed over him, huge and dripping, staring down like he was nothing more than meat. It wasn't playing anymore. It spread its massive hands and reached straight for Bai Ye's head, ready to crush him and be done with it. Despair flooded Bai Ye's chest. He shut his eyes. If I'm going to die, then just end it. But right before darkness swallowed him, a sharp red streak tore across the night sky and reflected into his eyes. The crimson light grew brighter and brighter, like a burning star falling straight toward them. Bai Ye's body suddenly heated up. His blood felt like it was boiling. Even the monster froze, sensing something wrong. It stopped mid-motion and snapped its head around. And, in that moment, the red light slammed down, completely swallowing the space around Bai Ye. The glare forced his eyes shut. Roar! A furious howl echoed through the park. Then the red light vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Silence dropped like a curtain. Time felt stuck. Bai Ye didn't know how long it took before he slowly regained awareness. The first thing he noticed was the quiet. Too quiet. He opened his eyes, confused. The monster was gone. Bai Ye quickly looked around. The hulking figure that had been standing over him had disappeared without a trace. If not for the pain still screaming in his shoulder, he would have thought he imagined everything. Then he saw it, a faint, pulsing red glow near his feet. Bai Ye gritted his teeth and propped himself up with his right hand, dragging his body toward the source. In the open patch where the monster had been standing, there was a small pile of gray-white sand. And floating above it, suspended in the air, was a blood-red, diamond-shaped crystal. It pulsed gently, as if it was breathing. Bai Ye's instinct screamed that this thing was the reason the monster vanished. Curiosity, fear, and desperation tangled together in his chest. Slowly, he reached out. His trembling fingers touched the crystal surface. And in the next instant, the crystal exploded into a ball of crimson light and shot straight into his chest. Bai Ye's eyes widened. Before he could react, Warmth spread through his body like a flood, washing away the pain and dragging the exhaustion out of his bones. He stared at his arms. The scratches were healing. The bruising faded. Even the raw swelling in his shoulder eased at a speed that made no sense. In a few seconds, his skin looked normal again. No scars. No marks. Only the torn clothes and dried blood proved anything had happened. Bai Ye sat there, stunned, breathing hard. Then reality punched through the shock. I can't stay here. If there was one monster, there could be more. And he looked like he'd crawled out of a nightmare. He forced himself up and left the park fast, not daring to look back. Back home, Bai Ye showered, changed, and locked himself in his room. He sat on the bed, heart still racing, and started checking his body. No visible injuries. No pain. It was like nothing happened. He needed proof. Something solid. After a moment of hesitation, he grabbed a fruit knife. He pressed it against his arm, then stopped. Too crazy. So, he chose his thumb instead. He inhaled sharply and cut. A sting. A thin line of blood. He dropped the knife immediately and stared. A warm current rose under the skin, familiar now, and right in front of his eyes, the cut closed up as if time rewound. When he wiped away the blood, not even a mark remained. Bai Ye's eyes widened. So, it's real. And that wasn't all. He could feel it now, a power sitting in his body like a loaded spring. He stood up slowly and focused. His muscles tightened.
Heat surged.
Strength poured into every limb. For a second, he genuinely felt like he could punch through the wall. He didn't try the wall. Instead, he picked up the dumbbells he used for workouts. Then he twisted. Metal groaned. The dumbbell bent like soft clay. Bai Ye stared at it, stunned. Great strength. He tested it again and again, almost laughing from the rush. Lifting the bed with one hand. Balancing with ridiculous ease. Trying stupid things just to prove it wasn't a dream. But the high didn't last. Fatigue slammed into him all at once. The strength drained fast, like a battery dying. So it's timed, he muttered, and let the state go. The moment he did, his legs went weak. He dropped onto the bed, breathing hard. Then warmth flowed through him again. The exhaustion melted away. Less than half a minute later, he could move normally. Bai Ye sat up, staring at his hands. Rapid healing and great strength. Two abilities that fit together perfectly. He'd only seen this kind of thing in movies and novels. Then his excitement cooled, replaced by a tight knot of questions. That red crystal. That monster. The videos. The comments saying more creatures were appearing. Everything pointed to one terrifying truth. The world was changing, and ordinary rules didn't apply anymore. If that crystal hadn't appeared tonight, he would have been dead. While he was still thinking, a strange memory surfaced in his mind, clear and natural, like it had always been there. Extraction. Extract certain traits, abilities, or bloodlines from living beings. Fusion. Fuse two or more extracted traits, abilities, or bloodlines. Bai Ye's breath caught. Extraction. Fusion. He finally understood. His healing and strength weren't random gifts. They were taken from that monster. Bai Ye stared at his palms, whispering as if afraid the words might summon something. Extract, then fuse. And suddenly his mind raced. If this was possible, then what else was possible? Ant strength. Cat reflexes. Flea jumping. Turtle lifespan. Water bear survival. Even the so-called immortality of the immortal jellyfish. And that was just normal creatures. If monsters like tonight's thing were appearing, then their traits would be even more ridiculous. At the end of that thought, one idea rose, heavy and bright, like a door cracking open in his head. Maybe gods aren't legends after all.
Hey everyone, welcome to our channel, and thank you for your support. If there's a favorite novel on the channel and you want the next part, you're just one step away. Become a Patreon member and I can make it depending on your tier. Thank you for your attention.
The sun rose as usual, but Bai Ye did not get up early as usual. Ding-ling-ling. A rapid phone call woke up Bai Ye, who was sleeping soundly. In a grouchy mood after waking up, Bai Ye picked up the phone with sleepy eyes and answered the call. "Hello. Who is this?" Bai Ye asked coldly with anger in his tone. Bai Ye was so excited last night that he fell asleep very late and completely forgot to get up early to go to work. "Bai Ye, what time is it now? Where are you? Yesterday I said we would have a morning meeting today, but you made so many people wait for you. Do you have any sense of time? Do you have any sense of community? I used to think highly of you, but how can I dare to use you when you are like this now?" As soon as the call was connected, Supervisor Bai Ye couldn't wait to scold and blame Bai Ye, as if Bai Ye had done something evil that was against the will of heaven and earth. Bai Ye quickly came to his senses after being scolded by his supervisor, and his anger began to soar. Because Bai Ye knew that he was most likely the target of the supervisor's authority and suppression. If it were in the past, Bai Ye would probably apologize immediately and make excuses to get by. But now Bai Ye is not going to swallow his anger. Anyway, he has no intention of continuing to do it. "Zhou Paopi, don't scream first. Take out a mirror and check if the green hat on your head is straight." Bai Ye sat up and said with a sarcastic tone. On the other side of the phone, Zhou Ruifa was stunned when he heard the sound coming from the phone. Then he suddenly became furious. In the conference room, everyone else instantly perked up after hearing Bai Ye's words. They all sat up straight and listened to Bai Ye's next words. "Bai Ye, what do you mean by this?" Zhou Ruifa asked in a cold voice, gritting his teeth. At this time, Zhou Ruifa made up his mind that if Bai Ye didn't explain the matter clearly, he would let Bai Ye know the consequences of talking nonsense. What no one noticed was that a young man sitting at the conference table was shivering with his head down. Upon hearing this, Bai Ye did not beat around the bush and directly sent a video clip from his phone to the work group. As a message alert sounded, some people in the conference room subconsciously took out their phones to check. And it didn't matter that they just watched it. After watching the content of the video, they all exclaimed in surprise. "Oh shit. Check the work group. Bai Ye posted a video. Hey, isn't this manager Zhou's wife? The man next to her looks like Xiao Zhang. This is Xiao Zhang." In the video posted by Bai Ye, a man and a woman with intimate behavior walked straight into a hotel. The two people in the video, the woman is Zhou Ruifa's wife, and the man is Zhou Ruifa's right-hand man and lackey Xiao Zhang. As for what the two of them went into the hotel for, I believe any adult would know. In an instant, all the people in the conference room who had watched the video turned their eyes to Xiao Zhang and Zhou Ruifa, who was watching the video. "Xian, you." Soon Bai Ye heard a commotion, smashing and wailing coming from the other end of the phone. After turning on the speaker and listening quietly for a while, Bai Ye hung up the phone contentedly. Bai Ye happened to see Xiao Zhang and Zhou Paopi's wife by chance. Since Zhou Paopi had been exploiting him all the time, he deliberately did not remind him and planned to leave it for later. And now Bai Ye has no plans to do it anymore, so naturally there is no need to keep it. After being disturbed by Zhou Paopi, Bai Ye was no longer sleepy, so he simply got up and washed. After washing up, Bai Ye had a simple breakfast and went out to take a taxi to the nearest flower and bird market. After entering the market, Bai Ye bought some breeding boxes and breeding tools as planned last night. Then I bought 10 mice and some small pets that are common on the market. After buying the things, Bai Ye called a car and took all the things back home. Bai Ye first cleaned up the small room where he usually stored sundries and then moved the tools and animals he bought today into this room. After finishing all this, Bai Ye put on a pair of thick, long-sleeved gloves and took out a little white mouse from the breeding box. Place it alone in a large, thickened breeding box. As soon as the little white mouse entered the breeding box, it ran around in panic and finally curled up in a corner under Bai Ye's gaze. After observing for a while, Bai Ye thought for a moment and took out a pet snake from the breeding box nearby. This pet snake is a non-venomous black corn snake, about 60 centimeters long. Bai Ye held the body of the corn snake and immediately used the extract skill for the first time. But what Bai Ye didn't expect was that when he was about to activate the skill, he felt a sense of blockage, which interrupted his skill. Just when Bai Ye was confused, a piece of information suddenly popped up in his mind. Insufficient energy. We are temporarily unable to extract living things. We can only extract dead things. Bai Ye thought about it and looked down at the corn snake in his hand. Crack. Thinking of this, Bai Ye didn't hesitate at all. He just twisted his hands and broke the corn snake's neck. After the corn snake completely stopped struggling, Bai Ye activated the extraction skill again. Soon, a red light quickly enveloped the snake's body. In just a few breaths, the red light on the snake's body slowly gathered and finally condensed into a drop of black liquid. Seeing this, Bai Ye quickly took out a small glass bottle and collected the black liquid. Bai Ye put the glass bottle with black liquid under the light and observed it. He looked at it and smelled it, but he didn't find anything strange about it. It seems that we can only know its effect after the experiment. As he spoke, Bai Ye took out a syringe and sucked the black liquid into it. Then he grabbed the mouse out of the breeding box and forced the drug into its stomach. After making sure that the mouse had completely swallowed the food, Bai Ye put the mouse back into the breeding box, closed the lid, and began to observe. In the feeding box, because Bai Ye roughly poured an unknown liquid into the little white mouse, it was frightened and ran around in the breeding box. About 10 seconds later, the little white mouse that was running around suddenly stopped, lay on its side, and began to twitch, screaming in pain, as if it was suffering great pain. Seeing this, Bai Ye quickly turned on the SLR camera and started recording the whole process. As time goes by, the mouse's hair quickly fell off and was replaced by snake-like scales that quickly covered its entire body. The mouse's originally slender tail also quickly thickened and grew scales at this time, becoming as strong as a snake's tail. In less than a few minutes, the originally white and clean mouse turned into a monster covered with black scales, with a body like a rat and a tail like a snake. This process lasted for about 10 minutes, during which time the mouse underwent subtle changes every moment. 10 minutes later, the mouse stopped struggling and rested on the ground for a few minutes. The little white mouse, which had successfully completed the transformation, stood up again and began to look at its new body. The completely mutated little white mouse could no longer be called a little white mouse, so Bai Ye named it snake scale mouse. As the name suggests, it is a rat with snake scales. In addition to growing snake scales and having a tail that is turned into a snake's tail, the snake-scaled rat has a much thinner body than the previous white mouse. The limbs have also undergone significant changes, somewhat resembling the claws of a pangolin. After recording all these characteristics, Bai Ye took out a wooden stick and inserted it into the breeding box through the feeding port. Bai Ye took a wooden stick and poked the rat's back gently to test its aggressiveness. However, what Bai Ye did not expect was that as soon as the wooden stick touched the back of the snake-scaled rat, the snake-scaled rat seemed to be frightened and began to flee around in the breeding box, with no intention of attacking at all. Bai Ye did not give up when he saw this, but instead continued to poke it with increasing force to provoke its resistance. Finally, after Bai Ye forced it into a corner and poked it hard a few times, the snake-scaled rat began to fight back. The snake-scaled rat quickly pounced on the wooden stick, tightly grasped the front end of the stick with its claws, and opened its mouth to bite it hard. Bai Ye held the stick in his hand and could clearly feel the strong vibration coming from the other end of the stick. He couldn't help but be surprised, because the power displayed by the snake-scaled rat at this time is no weaker than that of an adult cat. After letting the snake-scaled rat bite for a while, Bai Ye took back the stick and began to check for traces of something. At this time, a thumb-thick solid wooden stick was attacked by the snake-scaled rat in less than a minute. 2/3 of the front end had been bitten off, and there were several deep scratches on the place where the snake-scaled rat's claws were tightly holding it. The attack power has increased by at least 5 times, and the speed and reaction ability have also increased a lot. Bai Ye looked at it carefully and estimated in his mind. After recording all this, Bai Ye began his final experiment. Bai Ye put a spoonful of special feed for mice and a mouse into the breeding box at the same time, then stepped aside and began to observe. After a while, perhaps because the mutation had just consumed too much energy, the snake-scaled rat hurried over after smelling the food. Under Bai Ye's quiet gaze, the snake-scaled rat chose the pile of feed without any hesitation, without even looking at the mouse next to it. Soon the snake-scaled rat ate up a spoonful of feed, but judging from its appearance, it seemed that it was not full. After licking the crumbs on the ground clean, the rat finally noticed the mouse nearby. The snake-scaled rat came to the mouse, lowered its head and sniffed the mouse, then lost interest in it. Bai Ye immediately wrote in his notebook, "Preliminary observation shows that the test subject has retained the characteristics of a rat and has not been affected by the habits of a snake." After recording these, Bai Ye did not conduct further experimental observations on the snake-scaled rats. Although there are still many areas worth experimenting with snake-scaled rats, Bai Ye is not a professional after all. He only experiments on a few areas that deserve his special attention and gets the results. As for other matters, we can only deal with them when the conditions are right in the future. After putting the snake-scaled rat away alone, Bai Ye picked out another little white mouse. This time, Bai Ye plans to try out his other skill, fusion. After placing mouse number 2 alone in a breeding box, Bai Ye thought for a moment and picked out a corn snake and a chick. Using the same operation, Bai Ye quickly extracted 2 drops of mysterious liquid, one black and one red. After collecting the 2 drops of mysterious liquid, Bai Ye immediately activated the fusion skill. Under the guidance of an unknown force, the 2 drops of mysterious liquid began to slowly merge and finally merged into a drop of dark red liquid. After the dark red liquid was fed to mouse number 2, mouse number 2 soon began to fall to the ground and twitch, like the previous mouse. This time the mutation time is obviously a few minutes slower than the last time, and the changes are greater. The mutated mouse number 2 was very similar in shape to the snake-scaled mouse, and had snake scales all over its body. The difference is that the mutated mouse number 2's mouth has become a hard-shelled pointed beak like a chicken's beak. At the same time, its eyes have become much bigger, and a row of shallow tumors have grown on the top of its head. Looking at the completely mutated appearance of little white mouse number 2, Bai Ye was silent for a moment, and finally decided to give up the idea of naming this new species. There's no way, it just looks too abstract. It was another familiar experimental process, and Bai Ye soon got the data he wanted. Just like the previous experiment, the mutated mouse number 2 did not have a strong desire to attack, but also retain the habits of mice. But in terms of strength, mouse number 2 is stronger than the snake-scaled rat. After sorting out the experimental data, Bai Ye made mouse number 2 retire early. There was no way. After all, it had such a sharp beak, and Bai Ye couldn't guarantee that the incubator could withstand it. Looking at the corpse in the breeding box, Bai Ye immediately reached out and extracted a drop of black-red liquid from its body. I wonder if the same organism can mutate twice or more? Bai Ye looked at the liquid in his hand and couldn't help thinking. Truth comes from practice. Bai Ye then took out a chick and took out another drop of red liquid. Then the snake-scaled rat was taken out, and the red liquid was fed to it. Soon the snake-scaled rat fell to the ground and struggled again, screaming in pain. But for some reason, Bai Ye felt something was wrong. Sure enough, not long after, the snake-scaled rat that was struggling on the ground began to spit out blood, and blood began to seep out from between the scales on its body. The screams of pain became more and more shrill, as if death was about to occur in the next second. Bai Ye was also shocked when he saw this, and hurriedly observed the condition of the snake-scaled rat carefully, not daring to miss any details. After a minute, the rat's struggles and screams became quieter and quieter until there was no movement at all.
Dead.
Seeing this, Bai Ye quickly stretched out his wooden stick and poked the snake-scaled rat hard. After discovering that the snake-scaled rat was really dead, Bai Ye frowned slightly and began to record it in his notebook. The second mutation failed. It is suspected that the 2 forces collided, causing the body of the experimental subject to collapse.
No.
If the 2 forces conflict, then why was mouse number 2 able to mutate successfully? Could it be because of the fusion skill, which merged the 2 powers together and eliminated the conflict between them? After thinking for a moment, Bai Ye quickly figured out the key to the problem. Is it not possible to have a secondary mutation? If this is true, then Bai Ye would have to abandon at least half of his previous ideas.
Wait.
If I use the fusion skill on the experimental subject during the second mutation, I wonder if it will work. At this moment, Bai Ye suddenly had an idea and thought of a solution. Although the extraction skill cannot be used on living things for the time being, this also shows that the effect of the skill can work on living things. So can the fusion skills also be directly applied to living things? Thinking of this, Bai Ye quickly began to experiment again and once again created a snake-scaled rat and a drop of red liquid. Bai Ye then fed the red liquid to snake rat number 2 and put it in the breeding box. When snake-scaled rat number 2 began its second mutation, Bai Ye quickly used the fusion skill on snake-scaled rat number 2. Under Bai Ye's nervous waiting, the fusion skill was successfully performed. When the fusion skill was applied to snake-scale rat number 2, Bai Ye keenly felt that the state of snake-scale rat number 2 had stabilized. Just like the first mutation, changes slowly began to appear on his body. Success. Bai Ye was immediately delighted when he saw this. If there was a second mutation, then a third or fourth mutation would be possible as well. After a few minutes, snake rat number 2 successfully completed its second mutation, and its appearance and body shape were the same as those of white mouse number 2 after mutation. This means that Bai Ye's idea was successful. After resolving his worries, Bai Ye couldn't wait to start hybridizing various types of organisms. Mouse with antennae on its head, cat with wings growing out of its back, a snake with 4 legs. At night, Bai Ye, who had stayed in the room all day, finally walked out of the room with a sense of unfulfilled desire after all the experimental materials were used up. After a day of experimentation, Bai Ye obtained a lot of experimental data and experience. This gave him a deeper understanding of his own abilities and also allowed Bai Ye to have a preliminary plan for his future. After taking out his phone to order a takeaway, Bai Ye suddenly found a lot of messages on his phone. After a quick look, Bai Ye couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that after Bai Ye hung up the phone in the morning, Zhou Ruifa had a big fight with Xiao Zhang in the company. Originally, Xiao Zhang knew he was in the wrong and had no intention of fighting back, but later he discovered that Zhou Ruifa was beating him with the intention of killing him. So, in order to protect himself, Xiao Zhang decisively stood up to resist and started fighting with Zhou Ruifa. He also mocked Zhou Ruifa from time to time, saying that he was incompetent and could not satisfy his wife. As their anger continued to accumulate, the two gradually abandoned their last bottom line, and the company instantly turned into a life-and-death duel. Because the fight was too intense, no one dared to stop it. This also resulted in more than half of the company being destroyed during the fight between the two men before the police arrived. It is said that the boss almost fainted after hearing the news. The latest information is that Zhou Ruifa's wife is taking care of Xiao Zhang in the hospital and has expressed her intention to divorce Zhou Ruifa. After Zhou Ruifa received the news, he was rushed to the emergency room due to external injuries plus internal injuries plus mental injuries. I didn't expect that although Zhou Bapai's character at work was not good, he was still a man with blood, but it was a bit miserable. After learning about the follow-up, Bai Ye's anger towards Zhou Bapai immediately dissipated. After all, it was not a deep hatred. Just as Bai Ye was sighing, the takeaway arrived, so Bai Ye put away his phone, got up, and went out to get the takeaway. As soon as he opened the door and was about to go out, the door of Bai Ye's neighbor opposite also opened at this time. The door opposite opened, and a young man in sportswear came out. Bai Ye greeted politely. "Good evening, brotherly. Are you going out for exercise?" The young man did not reply after hearing this. He nodded slightly and left. Bai Ye watched him leave and sighed secretly. Compared with the young man just now, Zhou Ruifa's experience was not that miserable. The young man who lived opposite Bai Ye was named Li Ping'an, who was a few years older than Bai Ye. He was originally the owner of a small restaurant. He had a successful career and a happy family and was the envy of many people. But just a month ago, Li Ping'an's wife was hit by a speeding sports car that ran a red light when she was picking up their daughter from school. Due to the serious injuries, Li Ping'an's wife and daughter died on the spot. When Li Ping'an rushed to the hospital, there were only 2 cold bodies left. Afterwards, the rich second-generation family of the perpetrator found Li Ping'an with a lawyer, first made a sincere apology, and then took the initiative to compensate a large sum of money in order to settle the matter privately. However, Li Ping'an was too excited at that time and did not agree to them. If all this was just an accident, the best outcome might be to accept a private settlement and let it go. But that night, Li Ping'an received a video from a friend. The video shows a high-speed sports car hitting a mother and daughter who were crossing the road. Li Ping'an recognized at a glance that the mother and daughter who were hit were his wife and daughter. But the video doesn't end here. After the sports car hit the person, the driver did not stop to save the person immediately. Instead, he made a move that no one expected. The sports car in the video did not stop after hitting the people but turned the front of the car and hit the mother and daughter, who fell to the ground for the second time. As if to vent his anger, he pushed Li Ping'an's wife until she hit the curb. After watching the video, Li Ping'an was so angry that he swore that he would never settle the matter privately and would make the rich second generation go to jail. But reality slapped him hard in the face and kicked him into a ditch. What Li Ping'an didn't expect was that the second-generation rich man driving the car was from a wealthy and powerful family. Seeing that Li Ping'an was ungrateful, the other party used his connections to change the accident into a story and the perpetrator into an out-of-control vehicle. Just like that, a tragic accident ended up as a farce. In order to make Li Ping'an shut up, the other party closed down Li Ping'an's small restaurant. Then, in the middle of the night, several burly men broke into Li Ping'an's house, forced him to sign a letter of understanding, and left after leaving 1,000,000 yuan in compensation. Since then, Li Ping'an locked himself at home and did not go out for a whole half-month. Until a week ago, Li Ping'an started going out to exercise every day and never said a word to anyone he met. The whole person seemed like a machine, without a trace of life, and exuding a deadly indifference. Nothing could be more heart-destroying than this. Bai Ye thought with a heavy heart. After dinner, Bai Ye opened Douyin's short video and began to look for videos and news about monsters. After what happened last night, Bai Ye still had a bad feeling in his heart. Whether it was the humanoid monster I encountered last night, or the various bizarre creatures that appeared in last night's videos and comments, these creatures don't seem to be anything like what should appear in nature, or even on the blue planet. What made Bai Ye most uneasy was the official blockade of news and the delay in issuing rumor-refuting notices. After several searches, the result was as Bai Ye expected. There was no trace of those monsters on the internet. Everything seemed to be the same as usual, and society was peaceful. But Bai Ye knew that this was just the calm before the storm, and the world today was already undercurrent. After searching in vain, Bai Ye turned off his phone in boredom, leaned back on the sofa, and began to think about his next plan. After a day of experiments, Bai Ye named the mysterious liquid extracted from the organism as the biological origin. According to Bai Ye's observations and statistics, after the experimental subjects absorbed the biological essence and mutated, some obvious characteristics would appear on their bodies. For example, the snake scales on the snake-scaled rat, the chicken beak that appears after absorbing the biological essence of the chicken, etc. After reaching this conclusion, Bai Ye temporarily gave up the idea of absorbing the essence of organisms to mutate. Although Bai Ye is now eager to improve his strength to deal with the upcoming crisis in the future, he still feels a little disgusted about becoming a half-human, half-beast monster. And there is another important reason, that is, Bai Ye found that after he merged with the essence of the humanoid monster, he did not have any obvious characteristics. In other words, either oneself or those monsters that do not belong to the blue planet have the special ability to mutate without changing their appearance. However, which specific one it is still requires Bai Ye to experiment. Since he couldn't improve his own strength for the time being, Bai Ye could only make up for it from other aspects. Creating and developing your own power is a good choice. The reason why Bai Ye had this idea was that during the experiment in the past few days, Bai Ye discovered an alternative effect of the origin. By chance, Bai Ye discovered that the mutant creatures that had merged with the origin would not attack him. They also showed very intimate behavior and would not resist at all even if Bai Ye wanted to kill them. After discovering this phenomenon, Bai Ye couldn't help but have a bold guess in his mind. That is, the creature that has integrated with the origin will directly increase its favorability towards oneself to the maximum, just like the recognition of the master in the novel. However, whether this phenomenon also works on humans still needs Bai Ye to experiment. In addition, there are many benefits to creating a faction. After all, it is difficult for Bai Ye to obtain some precious and rare biological materials by himself. As for the research on those special monsters, Bai Ye had no idea where to start. Only professionals could do this kind of professional work. So after considering all aspects, Bai Ye finally decided to create an organization to serve himself. This is the only way to demonstrate your abilities to a greater extent. However, before that, Bai Ye still needs to do some experiments to determine what changes the human body will undergo after integrating the biological origin. Who should I find to do the experiment? Bai Ye leaned on the sofa, narrowed his eyes, and thought about where to find the experimental subject. Looking for a wanted criminal? No. Where can I find the person the police are looking for? Then go abroad to find foreigners? No. It's too troublesome and there's a possibility of accidents. Then who should I go to? Many candidates flashed through Bai Ye's mind, but he quickly gave up because these candidates all had various inappropriate qualities. Just when Bai Ye was worrying about the choice of experimental subject, a figure suddenly appeared in Bai Ye's mind. After thinking for a moment, Bai Ye suddenly sat up, turned his head, and looked towards the door with burning eyes. Li Ping'an. Bai Ye slowly uttered a name. 3 days passed in a flash. During these 3 days, Bai Ye first went to the company to complete the resignation procedures. Because of Zhou Ruifa's incident, the company was eager for Bai Ye to resign voluntarily, so all the procedures were completed as quickly as possible to get rid of Bai Ye, the plague god. In addition, after leaving his job, Bai Ye has been asking about Li Ping'an and investigating his character. Because once the experiment goes smoothly, Bai Ye plans to recruit Li Ping'an as his first subordinate, so Li Ping'an's character is very important. Fortunately, after learning more about him, Bai Ye was very satisfied with Li Ping'an's character. At this time, in Bai Ye's room, in front of the temporary experimental table, Bai Ye was preparing to start extracting the biological origin. After some thought, Bai Ye finally chose the origins of 3 creatures for Li Ping'an. The first one comes from the origin of the tabby cat. Bai Ye was attracted by its reaction speed, hunting instinct, night vision ability, etc. The second creature is a starfish. Starfish are one of the most powerful creatures in nature, with powerful self-healing abilities such as regeneration of broken limbs, repair of internal organs, and repair of bone plates. Of course, the starfish's self-healing ability is still not as good as Bai Ye's quick self-healing. The third creature is a little special. It is the mantis shrimp with the so-called bullet fist. According to scientific research, the 2 hammer-shaped feet of the mantis shrimp have an attack power comparable to that of a pistol bullet. What Bai Ye is interested in is its special attack ability. With the origins of these 3 creatures, Bai Ye believed that 3 world boxing champions were not enough for Li Ping'an to beat alone. I hope you won't let me down. Bai Ye shook the test tube in his hand, and a sharp, cold light flashed in his eyes. If Li Ping'an wants to regret after gaining the power, his fists and head must be harder than steel. Bai Ye waited at the door early according to the time, when Li Ping'an came back from exercise. When he heard the sound of the elevator door opening, Bai Ye opened the door and walked out. As usual, Li Ping'an walked towards the house covered in sweat, ignoring Bai Ye who was standing beside him. It's not that Li Ping'an is impolite, but since the death of his wife and daughter, Li Ping'an now has only one thought in his mind that keeps him alive. No other people or things could attract his attention at all. Bai Ye did not rush to call Li Ping'an, but waited for Li Ping'an to open the door and go in. Bai Ye suddenly rushed over and blocked the door that was about to close with one hand. Seeing Bai Ye blocking the door, Li Ping'an did not say anything, but just looked at Bai Ye quietly with his dead eyes. Brotherly, let's go in and talk. Bai Ye met Li Ping'an's gaze and said with a faint smile. Li Ping'an didn't say anything after hearing this. He looked at Bai Ye quietly for a moment, then let go of the door and turned to walk into the house. After entering Li Ping'an's home, Bai Ye first glanced around and found that the place was very clean and tidy, with everything neatly arranged. But for some reason, Bai Ye always felt that something was missing. At this moment, Li Ping'an came out of the kitchen with a kettle. Then she skillfully brewed 2 cups of tea and sat on the sofa. Bai Ye immediately sat opposite him and asked, Do you have surveillance cameras at home? If so, turn them off first. These surveillance cameras are not safe at all now. Bai Ye's tone was calm and easygoing, as if it was just an ordinary conversation between old friends. After hearing Bai Ye's words, Li Pingyan did not make any movement, as if he did not hear it, and just looked at Bai Ye quietly. Bai Ye didn't care about it. He just said 2 words calmly, Jin Hao. Jin Hao. As soon as this name came out, Li Pingyan's dead eyes instantly burst into hatred. Accompanied by rapid breathing, Li Pingyan's eyes soon turned red and his hands were clenched, and the whole person seemed to turn into a murderous beast. Facing Li Pingyan's murderous gaze, Bai Ye picked up the teacup, without changing his expression, gently blew away the hot steam in the teacup, and said nothing more. The Jin Hao that Bai Ye mentioned was the rich second generation who had hit and killed Li Pingyan's wife and daughter. That's why Li Pingyan lost his composure after Bai Ye mentioned this name. After an unknown amount of time, Li Pingyan's emotions gradually stabilized. He lowered his head and remained silent for a moment. He looked up at Bai Ye and said slowly, "There is no surveillance here." Li Pingyan's voice was a little hoarse and dry, as if he hadn't spoken for a long time. After getting the answer he wanted, Bai Ye went straight to the point. "Do you think you can kill Jin Hao and avenge the Jin family by yourself?" Bai Ye put down the teacup and looked at Li Pingyan and continued, "As far as I know, Jin Hao has 2 bodyguards around him to protect him 24 hours a day. Do you think you can kill Jin Hao and avenge yourself under the protection of 2 professional bodyguards? It is easy to find out about Jin Hao's bodyguard. After all, Jin Hao often appears in some public places." Li Pingyan naturally knew about the bodyguard matter. Otherwise, he would not have worked so hard to train and become stronger, although the hope was still slim. "What do you want to say?" Li Pingyan was not angered by Bai Ye's words, but directly asked about Bai Ye's purpose. "Now you have a chance for revenge, but the price is high. Are you willing to accept it?" As he spoke, Bai Ye stretched out his hand and slowly touched the edge of the marble tabletop. Huge force. Bai Ye activated his giant strength state, pinched the corner of the marble table, and gently exerted force. Bloody. With just a crisp sound, Bai Ye easily broke off a corner of the 18 millimeters thick marble tabletop. This scene immediately shocked Li Pingyan, who was standing opposite him. You have to know that this marble table was selected and purchased by him himself. It is definitely made of real material and cannot be a performance prop. How is it possible that someone could break such thick marble so easily with bare hands? But soon the shock in Li Pingyan's eyes was replaced by crazy passion. If I had this kind of power, then revenge would be... Thinking of this, Li Pingyan could no longer suppress his excitement and agreed without thinking. No matter what the price is, as long as it allows me to get revenge, I will agree to it. Originally, Li Pingyan planned to risk his life and exchange his life for Jin Hao's life for revenge. Therefore, he, who is not afraid of death, did not care at all about the price Bai Ye mentioned. Seeing that Li Pingyan agreed to it as expected, Bai Ye smiled. "Even though you don't care what the price is, I still need to tell you." Bai Ye put away his smile and continued seriously, "You need to pay 2 prices. The first price is that after you get the power you want, everything you have, including your life, will belong to me. You must obey all my orders unconditionally, even if it means I ask you to die." Li Pingyan didn't hesitate after hearing this and nodded and agreed. "Okay, but you have to wait until I complete my revenge." "That's natural." Bai Ye nodded and continued. "The second price is that after you accept the power, you may turn into a monster. From then on, you will never be able to return to normal life and be a normal person. It doesn't matter, as long as I can get revenge," Li Pingyan said calmly. Hearing this, Bai Ye looked at Li Pingyan in surprise. He didn't expect that he would agree so easily. "It seems that I have underestimated the power of hatred," Bai Ye thought to himself. After asking Li Pingyan to draw all the curtains in the living room, Bai Ye took out a small glass bottle containing orange-red liquid from his pocket. "Drink it," Bai Ye said after handing the glass bottle to Li Pingyan. Upon hearing this, Li Pingyan took the glass bottle, opened it, and drank it without any hesitation. Upon seeing this, Bai Ye immediately observed Li Pinggan's condition intently. Plop, plop, plop. After drinking what Bai Ye gave him, Li Pinggan soon felt a burst of heat in his body and his heart began to beat violently. Before Li Pinggan could react, a sudden, heart-wrenching, bone-deep pain swept through his whole body. Without any preparation, Li Pinggan fell directly to the ground and began to twist and struggle.
Ah!
The severe pain caused Li Pinggan to scream in agony, and his consciousness gradually became blurred. Bai Ye on the side frowned slightly when he saw this. If Li Pinggan couldn't bear it and fainted now, then after the mutation was completed, he would most likely become a consciousnessless monster. This was the conclusion Bai Ye came to after he was fusing the 3 biological essences on a white mouse. The mouse could not bear the pain and fainted halfway through the process, eventually turning into an unconscious, living dead mouse. Can't you bear this little pain of wanting revenge? If that's the case, you might as well just run into a wall and die right now, and go down to be with your wife and daughter. In order to stimulate Li Pinggan's consciousness, Bai Ye said loudly and indifferently, "Dongmei? Xiaoxing." As Bai Ye finished speaking, 2 figures, one big and one small, suddenly appeared in Li Pinggan's mind as his consciousness gradually faded away. Wake up safely. Dad is such a lazy bum. He hasn't even gotten up yet. Hurry up and play with me. Looking at the 2 familiar faces and hearing a familiar voice, Li Pinggan regained consciousness instantly, just to see more clearly. But to his disappointment, as he regained consciousness, the 2 figures disappeared. At this moment, a suffocating feeling as if falling into an abyss enveloped Li Pinggan's heart, even suppressing the severe pain in his body. I want revenge. Under Bai Ye's gaze, Li Pinggan slowly opened his eyes and roared word by word with all his strength. Then Li Pinggan tried to raise his head and stared at the wall not far away with his bloodshot eyes. Bai Ye looked over and saw a family photo hanging on the wall not far away. The photo isn't very good, but it's warm. Family portrait? A hint of hatred flashed across Bai Ye's cold eyes without him noticing, as if some unbearable memories were evoked. After just a glance, Bai Ye pursed his lips and looked away. Soon, Li Pinggan's transformation officially began. Li Pinggan's muscles became stronger and stronger, and his height continued to grow. In just a short while, Li Pinggan transformed from a subhealthy young man of 1.78 meters into a strong man of 1.98 meters. The mutation was not over yet. A layer of light blue armor began to grow on Li Pinggan's body. It wrapped tightly around his body, like a close-fitting exoskeleton armor. Bai Ye also didn't expect that Li Pinggan would undergo such a big change after absorbing the biological essence. Seeing this, Bai Ye couldn't help but start looking forward to Li Pinggan's strength after he completed the mutation. Li Pinggan's mutation lasted for half an hour. During this half hour, Li Pinggan did not cry out in pain again. He kept his eyes fixed on the family portrait on the wall and gritted his teeth to persevere until the mutation was over. It's done. Seeing that Li Pinggan's breathing had completely stabilized, Bai Ye suddenly became alert and stood up quickly. At this time, Li Pinggan, who had completed the mutation, had been completely transformed. Except for his body shape, which still looked like a human, all other aspects were different from ordinary people. Li Pinggan, who had quickly completed the mutation, recovered his strength, stood up from the ground, and began to look at his body. How is it? Do you regret it? Bai Ye asked. Li Pinggan raised his hand and clenched his fist, feeling the surging power in his body, and shook his head gently. As long as I can get revenge, it doesn't matter. Bai Ye nodded when he heard this. Don't worry, you will be able to take revenge soon. Yes, I can finally take revenge. Li Pinggan murmured in a low voice with overwhelming hatred. We can talk about revenge later. Now, show me what you are capable of. Bai Ye was also very curious about what kind of abilities his combination of 3 origins would give to Li Pinggan. Li Pinggan nodded when he heard this, then stretched out his right hand and quickly waved it towards the marble table in front of him. There was a sharp, piercing sound, and the next second, a deep claw mark appeared on the originally smooth marble tabletop. Upon seeing this, Bai Ye hurriedly looked at Li Pinggan's hands and indeed found sharp claws on his fingers. These claws are like those of cats. They can be retracted into my fingers when not in use and can pop out instantly when needed. As he spoke, Li Pingon gave Bai Ye a demonstration. It can directly destroy marble. It seems that the hardness has also been greatly improved. Bai Ye looked at the scratches on the table and speculated in his mind. Continue. Li Pingon took a step back after hearing this, then turned to Bai Ye and said, "Please step back." Hearing this, Bai Ye said nothing and immediately retreated behind the sofa. Then Li Pingon clenched his right fist and raised his hand to gather strength. In just a flash, the marble table in front of him exploded with a loud bang and broke into pieces in an instant. Bai Ye, who was standing by, was so shocked that his pupils shrank suddenly. So fast. I couldn't even see the punch clearly. Bai Ye's body has been strengthened by the monster's essence. Although not as abnormal as Superman, his physical fitness and 5 senses have been strengthened exponentially. But even so, Bai Ye couldn't see the trajectory of Li Pingon's punch clearly. Bai Ye soon thought of something. Is this the bullet punch of the mantis shrimp? The attack speed of the mantis shrimp is as high as 80 kilometers per hour, and it can complete an attack within 0.02 seconds. This speed is completely incapable of being captured by the human eye, not even if Bai Ye has been enhanced. How many consecutive punches can you throw now? Bai Ye asked, looking down at Li Pingon's hand. Li Pingon felt the consumption of his physical strength after hearing this, and after thinking for a while, he said, "About 15 punches." "Well, go on." In the following time, Li Pingon demonstrated all his abilities one by one. He also gave a detailed introduction to the abilities that could not be demonstrated directly. Yes, the abilities that should be inherited were inherited as I expected. Bai Ye looked at the data on the notebook and a satisfied smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Next, Bai Ye will do a most important experiment to verify his conjecture. Bai Ye stretched out his arm and said to Li Pingon, "Now use your claws to attack my arm." After saying this, Bai Ye stared into Li Pingon's eyes, observing his emotional changes. After hearing Bai Ye's order, Li Pingon's eyes suddenly showed resistance. For some reason, whenever Li Pingon thought about attacking Bai Ye's arm, he would feel an uncontrollable resistance in his heart. As a result, he didn't even think about raising his hand, let alone attacking Bai Ye's arm. After a while, Li Pingon shook his head helplessly and said, "Sorry, I can't fulfill this request." After saying that, Li Pingon recounted his previous condition. After listening to Li Pingon's words, Bai Ye smiled. As he had guessed, the creatures that had merged with the origin would not have the thought of harming themselves. Even if it is an order given by yourself, it won't work. After verifying what he was thinking, Bai Ye secretly dispelled his guard against activating the giant power state. Apart from these, have you seen any other changes? Bai Ye closed his notebook and looked up and asked. "There is one more, but I'm not sure," Li Pingon said with some uncertainty. "Tell me about it. I don't know why, but I always have an inexplicable desire and closeness to water. I don't want to drink water. I want to stay in the water." Li Pingon said, a little confused. "Go into the water and stay there?" Bai Ye pondered for a moment after hearing this, and soon thought of a possibility. "Do you have a bigger bucket at home?" Soon in the bathroom, Li Pingon looked at the big bathtub filled with water in front of him. Turning to Bai Ye, he asked, "Do you want to bury your head completely?" "Yes, bury them all in the water." Bai Ye nodded expressionlessly. Faced with Bai Ye's order, Li Pingon had no objection and dived directly into the water. Seeing this, Bai Ye quickly squatted down and carefully observed Li Pingon's head buried in the water. "Relax, imagine you can breathe underwater, and slowly relax your breath." Following Bai Ye's instructions, Li Pingon began to slowly adjust his state. About 5 seconds later, Bai Ye noticed that a few cracks slowly opened behind Li Pingon's ears. Then these fine cracks began to open and close rhythmically, like the gills of a fish. Crash. A minute later, Li Pingon raised his head from the water. "I can actually breathe in water," Li Pingon said to Bai Ye in surprise. Bai Ye nodded and took out his notebook. Describe how you feel in the water. Li Pingon. Oh, okay. After finishing the recording, Bai Ye put away his notebook and looked at Li Pingon seriously. I'll give you 3 days to take revenge, but no matter what method you use, you can't reveal your current appearance. And, most importantly, don't miss your biological samples. What are biological samples? Li Pingon asked. Bai Ye. It's body fluids, hair, tissues, etc. Li Pingon nodded thoughtfully after hearing this. Bai Ye continued, after you have taken revenge, don't come back here for now. Go hide in the lake in Longhu Park. I will prepare daily necessities for you in advance. Don't come out unless necessary. Yes, I see. Li Pingon knew that if something happened to the Jin family, it would definitely cause a big disturbance due to the social influence of the Jin family. By then, it would only be a matter of time before the police tracked him down. After entrusting the follow-up arrangements, Bai Ye's expression eased a little, and after hesitating for a moment, he asked, "Can I help you?" "Thank you, no thanks. I have been planning for this day for a long time." Li Pingon clenched his fists, feeling the surging power in his body, and shook his head to refuse Bai Ye's help. In addition to exercising every day, Li Pingon has been collecting information about the Jin family. He even went to the villa area where the Jin family lived to check it out in person. In order to get revenge, Li Pingon had thought of many plans, but his own strength had always been a flaw and he had no way to make up for it, so they had to be shelved temporarily. But now with Li Pingon's strength, these are not problems. Thinking of this, Li Pingon turned to look at the family portrait on the wall and murmured, "Wait for me." At night, in the Jin family villa. "Dad, when can I go out? I've been at home for a month, and I'm almost bored to death." In the magnificent living room, Jin Hao lay on the sofa with a look of despair on his face, complaining to Jin Wanhao. "Humph, it's better to be dead. It saves me the trouble." Upon hearing this, Jin Wanhao put down the phone in his hand and snorted in annoyance. "Pa, pa, pa. What kind of death is that? How can you say that about your own son?" When Jin Ma, who was sitting next to them, heard this, she immediately became unhappy. "Humph, what do you know? Do you know how much trouble he has caused this time?" Jin Wanhao pointed at Jin Hao standing beside him with an angry tone. On the side, Jin Hao muttered softly after hearing this. "Isn't it just that we accidentally hit 2 people? Besides, haven't we already paid for it?" "You know nothing." Hearing this, Jin Wanhao immediately became furious and started swearing. "Do you know how much impact this incident has on the group? If I hadn't spent a lot of money and used my connections to suppress this matter, you would have become a target of public criticism. By then, not only will you be in trouble, but our family and even the entire group will be caught up in a storm of public opinion." "Xiaohao, your father is right. You know how much those low-class people on the internet hate the rich. As long as there is a little negative news about the rich, they can't wait to rush over and eat him up. He is so fierce." At this time, Jin's mother also echoed with disgust and a look of disdain on her face. On the sofa, Jin Hao, who had been confused, suddenly understood the importance of the matter after hearing what was said and couldn't help feeling a little scared. He is also a person who often surfs the internet, so he naturally knows the horror of being cyberbullied. "Ha! Are you scared now?" Seeing Jin Hao's frightened face, Jin Wanhao couldn't help but snorted coldly. Jin Hao's face turned pale and blue when he heard this. He was filled with rage, but didn't know who to vent his anger on. Suddenly Jin Hao seemed to remember something and sat up straight. "Humph! This is all the fault of that guy surnamed Li. If he had known better and taken the money to sign the letter of understanding, there wouldn't have been so many problems." For a moment, the anger in Jin Hao's heart seemed to have found a breakthrough, and it was all vented on Li Pingon. "When I regain my freedom, I will never let him go." Jin Hao blamed all the faults on Li Pingon and immediately made up his mind. "After this matter is over, I must vent my anger on Li Pingon." However, Jin Wanhao on the side saw what Jin Hao was thinking at a glance, and his face suddenly became serious. "I warn you, after this is over, don't create trouble again, otherwise you will be in trouble," Jin Wanhao warned coldly. Jin Hao, who was still imagining how to torture Li Ping'an, became unhappy when he heard this. Why, Dad? That Li guy caused such a huge loss to our family, and he still got $1 million. I'm so angry just thinking about him being left alone like this. Do you know what the consequences are of pushing a person who has nothing to worry about into a desperate situation? Jin Wonhao's face was extremely serious. He stared at Jin Hao and asked, "There are only 2 possible outcomes in this situation. One is that he can't handle the pressure and commits suicide. The other is that he turns into a desperate lunatic and launches a crazy revenge." Hearing Jin Wonhao's words, Jin Hao's face instantly stiffened. That man named Li Ping'an, his wife and daughter were killed by you, and his career was ruined. His parents are taken care of by his 2 brothers. If you push a person like this who has almost nothing to rely on into a desperate situation, the consequences will definitely be out of control. So the $1 million I got was not compensation, but peace of mind money. At this point, Jin Wonhao looked at Jin Hao's somewhat uneasy face and softened his tone. "Xiao Hao, I have said so much just to make you understand a truth. A gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall. He prevents disasters beforehand so as not to be hurt later. Although we have a lot of money and a status far beyond that of ordinary people in the final analysis, we are still human beings. Bodyguards can also be careless sometimes. We can't withstand knives or bullets." At this time, Jin's mother beside him was also frightened and quickly advised, "Yes, Xiao Hao, there is no need for us to provoke a lunatic for such a small matter." Gudong. After hearing what Jin Wonhao said, Jin Hao swallowed his saliva in fear, and the anger in his heart suddenly disappeared. "I understand, Dad. I won't bother him again," Jin Hao quickly assured. "Stupid. Do you think revenge is to beat him up?" After listening to Jin Hao's assurance, Jin Wonhao was not only dissatisfied, but also glared at him with disappointment. Faced with Jin Wonhao's changes, Jin Hao was unable to react for a moment. There are many ways to take revenge on someone, but you chose the stupidest one. Having said that, Jin Wonhao began to impart his experience to Jin Hao. For example, inducing him to become a gambler and finally letting him fall into the abyss. Another example is framing someone and sending him directly to jail. Or they may directly arrange some public opinion and cyberbully them. Even when absolutely necessary, you can arrange some accidents to directly eliminate the root of the problem. At this point, Jin Wonhao's eyes flashed with anger. After all, Jin Wonhao is no pushover, as he has built such a big business. When Jin Ma heard this, she remained calm, as if she was used to it.
Gao.
"Dad, you have more bad ideas. It's true that the old saying is true, the older you are, the wiser you are." After listening to this, Jin Hao immediately gave Jin Wonhao a thumbs up and expressed his deep admiration.
Puff.
Cough, cough, cough. Jin Wonhao, who was drinking water, choked on the water when he heard this. "Tsk. Xiao Hao, how can you talk like that?" Upon seeing this, Jin's mother quickly patted Jin Wonhao on the back and spoke to Jin Hao in a reproachful manner. Did I say something wrong?" Jin Hao quickly smiled awkwardly. At the corner of the second-floor stairs, a figure wrapped tightly was secretly watching the 3 people in the living room. Such a warm scene full of family joy was extremely cold in Li Ping'an's heart. He didn't expect that the death of his wife and daughter was just a trivial matter in their eyes. He didn't expect that these beasts would be so shameless as to blame all the faults on him. He never expected that even though he was in such a miserable state, these beasts still had no intention of letting him go. Especially after hearing Jin Wonhao's sinister and vicious ideas, Li Ping'an felt a chill in his heart. He couldn't imagine how desperate he would be if he were to be responsible for these plans. "You all deserve to die." The murderous intent in Li Ping'an's heart suddenly reached its peak. He stared at the 3 people below with cold eyes, and sharp claws popped out from his hands in an instant.
"Don't worry, Dad.
I know what to do." After receiving the true teachings from Jin Wonhao, Jin Hao felt that he was now extremely powerful. He was already impatient to try out these good ideas on Li Ping'an. Remember that courage and carefulness are both indispensable, but the most important thing is to use your brain. You can't conquer the world with fists and feet alone. Seeing that his teachings had taken effect, Jin Wanhao felt a sense of pride. Upon hearing this, Jin Hao quickly responded, I know. You just have to be ruthless. This child is teachable. Hearing this, Jin Wanhao stopped talking and just nodded with a smile. Just as Jin Hao excitedly began to plan in his mind, he suddenly noticed that, behind the sofa where Jin Wanhao and Jin Ma were sitting, a tall figure in a black robe appeared out of nowhere. Seeing this, Jin Hao suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis and shouted loudly,
Dad.
Be careful. But before Jin Hao could finish shouting, the man in black behind the sofa attacked instantly. Before Jin Wanhao noticed something was wrong and looked back, a fist wrapped in black cloth came whistling towards his head. Bang! There was a muffled sound, and Jin Hao's eyes were suddenly covered with blood. Before he could scream, Jin Hao's voice was suppressed by Jin Ma's terrified, high-pitched voice. Don't want. Before Jin Ma finished her words, a familiar muffled sound rang out again, and Jin Ma's voice suddenly stopped. The pungent smell of warm blood instantly made Jin Hao realize something. So Jin Hao hurriedly shouted, Mom? Unfortunately, no one responded to him. Only a faint sound of water spraying was heard in the silent living room. Silence is better than words at this time. In the silence, Jin Hao's fear instantly reached its peak. In a panic, Jin Hao simply wiped the blood from his eyes. But as soon as I opened my eyes, what I saw was still a sea of blood. I must have not wiped it clean enough. Jin Hao quickly closed his eyes again and began to wipe it vigorously. But no matter how he wiped it, what he saw was still a sea of blood.
Dad.
Mom. Looking at the two headless bodies still spurting blood on the sofa, Jin Hao could only accept the reality and burst into tears. At this time, Li Pingon was standing behind Jin Hao, looking at Jin Hao's collapse with great satisfaction. Despite such a bloody scene, Li Pingon not only did not feel any discomfort, he even felt unprecedentedly happy and relaxed. Maybe it's true, as they just said, that I'm really a lunatic. Li Pingon thought to himself. At this moment, Jin Hao suddenly noticed the shadow on the ground and quickly turned around to look. When he saw the black-robed man who killed his parents standing behind him, Jin Hao was so frightened that his legs went weak and he fell to the ground. Then a surge of anger rushed straight to his brain. He temporarily forgot his fear and frantically asked Li Pingon, Why?
Why?
Who are you? Why did you kill them? It's just 2 lives. Isn't that a trivial matter to you? Li Pingon was not angered by Jin Hao's questioning, but asked back calmly. But they are my parents. They are still my wife and daughter. Listening to Jin Hao's desperate shouting, Li Pingon's long-suppressed anger was completely ignited. Wife, daughter? Hearing this, Jin Hao suddenly thought of something and looked up at Li Pingon in disbelief. It's you. Jin Hao suddenly lost his voice in horror. Now I'm going to let you experience the feeling of being hit, too. As he spoke, Li Pingon suddenly stretched out his bloody right hand and grabbed Jin Hao's head tightly. No, don't. I can give you a lot of money. Let me go, I know I was wrong. Feeling the breath of death approaching, Jin Hao's courage suddenly disappeared, and he quickly begged for mercy with trembling mouth. I'm not the one you should apologize to, and I'm sending you to see them now. After Li Pingon finished speaking in Jin Hao's ear, like a devil's whisper, he grabbed Jin Hao's head and lifted him up. Bang! Li Pingon grabbed Jin Hao's head and slammed it hard on the floor. Then 1, 2, 3 times. Only after Jin Hao's head turned into a bloody mess did Li Pingon let go of the bloody scalp in his hands. Call. After Li Pingon let out a long breath, he looked at the 3 bodies on the ground, and finally a long-lost smile appeared on his face. Afterwards, Li Pingon found some spare gasoline from the garage and sprinkled it all over the living room. Then he took out a photo from his pocket, looked at it carefully, lit it, and threw it into the gasoline. Boom! The fire suddenly appeared, and the raging flames spread rapidly. In the light of the fire, The photo burning on the ground was actually the family portrait on the wall of Li Ping'an's home. Outside the Jin family villa, Li Ping'an looked at the Jin family villa in front of him, which had turned into a sea of fire, and his mood calmed down again. He murmured to himself, "From now on, Li Ping'an is also dead." He promised Bai Ye that after revenge, his life would belong to Bai Ye. So, in order to let go of the previous obsession and cut off my past, Li Ping'an planned to let himself die in the fire. The fire at Jin's house quickly attracted the attention of other residents, and the fire brigade arrived at the scene soon. After half an hour's effort, the fire was finally put out. "Captain, we found 3 headless bodies in the living room, and according to our preliminary judgment, the fire was caused by someone igniting a large amount of gasoline." After the fire was put out, the firefighters quickly found the bodies of Jin House family and hurried out to report. Upon hearing this, the fire captain immediately ordered the team members inside to evacuate, then cordoned off the scene and notified the police. When the police learned that a murder had occurred and that the deceased was likely the family of Jin Wanhao, a well-known entrepreneur in the city, not daring to delay for even a second, he quickly gathered people and rushed here. The next morning, although the police tried their best to block the news of the Jin family's massacre last night, the incident still became a hot topic early this morning. #shocked. A billionaire's family was wiped out overnight.
Hashtag.
The billionaire's family was wiped out, and there is an unknown truth behind it. #billionaire destroyed. These 2 keywords instantly attracted the attention of countless netizens. For a time, all kinds of news about the Jin family spread everywhere. Of course, Bai Ye also noticed this explosive news at the first time. Destroy the whole family?
Good job.
After reading this news, Bai Ye knew that Li Ping'an had completed his revenge and had also cut off the roots, thus reducing a lot of trouble. Bai Ye couldn't help but say in his heart that it was a good job. If nothing unexpected happens, Li Ping'an should be in the lake of Longhu Park now. After the storm is over, I can officially start my plan. After saying that, Bai Ye stood up and walked to the window, looking at the park lake in the distance, wondering what he was thinking. The next morning, Bai Ye, who was sleeping late, was suddenly awakened by a knock on the door. Before he reached the door and opened it, he heard a noise coming from outside. Snap! Bai Ye opened the door and saw 2 police officers in formal attire. Behind them, Bai Ye also saw many people coming in and out of Li Ping'an's house. "Hello, we are from the city police department. We have a case that requires your cooperation in the investigation. Is it convenient for us to come in and talk?" Among the 2 police officers at the door, one of them, a middle-aged male police officer in his 40s, asked Bai Ye after showing his ID. Bai Ye calmly withdrew his gaze after hearing this, nodded and said, "Okay, come in." Having said that, Bai Ye turned around and led the 2 of them into the living room and sat down. After entering Bai Ye's home, the 2 police officers quickly looked around. As soon as the middle-aged police officer sat down, he asked as if he was chatting with his family, "May I ask your name and occupation?" Bai Ye, Bai as in black and white. Yes. I just resigned and haven't found a job yet." Bai Ye answered truthfully. "Mr. Bai is usually alone at home?" Then the middle-aged police officer asked some more questions about Bai Ye, and Bai Ye answered them all in detail. "Okay, let's get to the point. Excuse me, Mr. Bai, have you seen your next-door neighbor Li Ping'an recently?" The middle-aged police officer regained his nonchalant attitude and asked with sharp eyes and a serious expression. Bai Ye pretended to recall the past and said, "I saw him yesterday afternoon." "What time in the afternoon?" "Around 6 o'clock. I happened to see him leaving the house when I went out to pick up takeout." Hearing Bai Ye's words, the 2 police officers immediately perked up. Because according to their investigation, the 3 people from the Jin family died around 8 o'clock in the evening, so Li Ping'an had plenty of time to commit the crime. "Then, do you know what he's going to do when he goes out?" the middle-aged policeman continued to ask. "He should be going out for exercise. He goes out for exercise every day during this period." "Exercise?" Upon hearing this, the middle-aged policeman recalled the information about Li Ping'an and found that he did not have the habit of exercising. Thinking of this, his suspicion of Li Pinggan deepened even more. Have you ever seen him behave in an unusual way or say anything strange?
No.
This time Bai Ye answered very straightforwardly. He usually doesn't go out except for exercise. He doesn't reply when we greet each other, and doesn't say a word. Then the middle-aged police officer asked many more questions about Li Pinggan, and Bai Ye said everything he needed to say. From beginning to end, Bai Ye plays the role of an unrelated neighbor. Half an hour later. Okay, thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Bai. We won't bother you anymore. With that, the two police officers quickly packed up their things, stood up and walked towards the door. When the two of them walked out of the door, and Bai Ye was about to close it, the middle-aged police officer suddenly turned around and said, "By the way, Mr. Bai, if you see Li Pinggan again, please call us immediately." Okay. Bai Ye smiled and nodded in response. After saying that, Bai Ye closed the door. Master, based on the clues we have collected so far, Li Pinggan is undoubtedly the most suspicious. So, should our next investigation focus on Li Pinggan? At this time, the young policeman, who had never spoken from beginning to end, took out his notebook and asked the middle-aged policeman excitedly. The middle-aged police officer shook his head upon hearing this, and said in a low voice with a serious expression, "This case is no longer under our jurisdiction." Why? The young police officer asked in confusion. The middle-aged police officer shook his head and said, "No reason. This case has been taken over by the higher-ups. All we have to do next is to complete the basic tasks." That's okay. After hearing this, the young police officer hesitated for a moment, then sighed helplessly. In fact, unlike the young police officers, the middle-aged police officers did not believe that Li Pinggan was responsible for this case from the beginning to the end. Even if he was not a staunch atheist, he would have doubted in his heart whether this case was committed by humans. Because according to the autopsy report, Jean Hao's parents' heads were smashed by a blunt object. Note that it's not the skull that is shattered, but the entire head that explodes into pieces. Such a horrific attack could not possibly be caused by human power. But the problem is that there were no signs of fighting or use of heavy weapons at the scene. And the cause of Jean Hao's death was also quite bizarre. He was killed by someone holding his head and slamming it against the ground. The head had turned into a mess, with only the palm-sized back of the head remaining intact. To achieve this effect, even an Olympic weightlifting champion would not be able to do so. This is why the middle-aged police officer still couldn't believe it even after many clues pointed to Li Pinggan. Oh, let's leave this matter to the people above us to deal with. The middle-aged police officer sighed inwardly. By the window, Bai Ye's eyes flickered as he watched the police car withdraw below. I didn't expect that the investigation would lead to Li Pinggan so soon. Come to think of it, Li Pinggan has a mortal feud with the Jean family. Now that something is wrong with the Jean family, isn't he the biggest suspect? Forget it, I'll just stay home for the time being and continue to perfect my plan. Having said that, Bai Ye turned around and went back into the house. A week has passed in a flash. During this period, the police called Bai Ye twice. One of them was to ask about Li Pinggan. The second is to ask Bai Ye if he has seen Li Pinggan again. In addition, Bai Ye gradually discovered that there were more and more news about unknown monsters on the internet. Especially on short video platforms, videos of unknown monsters can often be seen. Although these videos will be banned soon, they can easily become popular due to the large number of people paying attention to them. Most of the monsters in these videos are like the beast-shaped monsters that Bai Ye saw at the beginning. And there was no trace of the humanoid monster Bai Ye. But what interested Bai Ye the most was a monster photographed by a foreign netizen. It was a dark blue snake about 10 meters long, with a conical horn on its head and wings. The location where it was photographed was a city abroad. The scene was very chaotic, and there were more than a dozen people lying on the ground. The murderer who killed these people was the snake, which Bai Ye called the thunder snake. Why is it called Razor? It is because it can control lightning to attack. Of course, it is not like the electric eel, which can only release electricity to shock people. In the video, Bai Ye clearly saw the razor flying in the air, spitting out lightning and easily piercing a car from a distance of several meters. Anyone who gets touched by it will be electrocuted and fall to the ground. The power is extremely alarming. It's a pity that Razor appeared abroad, otherwise Bai Ye would definitely try his best to get its origin. In Bai Ye's bedroom. At this time, Bai Ye, who was lying on the bed, was holding his mobile phone and watching a short video. Oh, it's such a painful feeling that I can only look at something but can't touch it. Bai Ye sighed helplessly as he put down his phone. Bai Ye just saw a video of a monster on his phone. When I looked at the TP address, it turned out to be in the small sakura garden next door. No, I have to speed at the pace of building my power, otherwise I will miss out on so many good sources. As he spoke, Bai Ye got up from the bed, walked quickly to the window, and looked downstairs. After looking around and not finding any tailing vehicles, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that the police have temporarily given up the idea of keeping an eye on Li Ping'an here. Now that the storm has calmed down temporarily, it is time to take action. Bite. Just then, Bai Ye's phone suddenly rang with a message alert. Bai Ye picked up his phone and saw that it was a message from his childhood friend Xiao Xiong. Bai, you may not believe this, but I saw the legendary phoenix today. Phoenix? When seeing this sentence, Bai Ye's first reaction was that the bear had just encountered a monster. Are you okay? Bai Ye quickly typed and asked. I'm fine. I saw it from a distance. It didn't notice me. Then, Xionggang sent Bai Ye a video. In the video, a ball of fire was seen passing through the sky and falling towards a hilltop. As the camera zoomed in, the ball of fire turned out to be a large bird covered in red flames. However, due to poor pixels, only a general idea can be seen, and the detailed features are not clear. At the end of the video, the big bird finally landed on a hill and then disappeared. How is it? I didn't lie to you. At this time, Xionggang sent another message boasting. After Bai Ye exited the video, his heart was already filled with excitement. Just now he was still thinking about where to get the origin of the monster, but unexpectedly, he got a clue immediately. So, Bai Ye quickly picked up the phone and asked, Where is that mountain? It is a mountain not far from my home, Guishan. Gongzi, I remember we haven't seen each other for a long time. I'll come visit you in a couple of days. Okay. Come on, you will have something to worry about. I mean, you can eat as much fruit as you want on the fruit mountain. Well, remember to line up to welcome him. Roll. Looking at the angry emoticon sent by Xionggang, Bai Ye showed a smile on his face. Bai Ye watched the video again and looked at the big bird in the video. He couldn't help but have some guesses in his mind. Could this giant bird covered in flames possess unusual attack skills like the lightning snake? It seems that we need to make some preparations in advance. Judging from the video, the big bird is covered in red flames, so it is obvious that its attack skills must be related to fire. Thinking of this, Bai Ye turned on the 1000-degree search and began to search for the creature with the strongest fire resistance. As the page changes, a message appears on the phone. Pompeii worm, a creature that lives in hot springs around underwater volcanoes. It is the most resistant to high temperatures and temperature differences known animal on the blue planet. However, when searching for its maximum temperature resistance, Bai Ye saw many answers. Some say 81 degrees Celsius, some say 700 degrees Celsius, and some say 100 degrees Celsius. There are so many different opinions, and Bai Ye doesn't know which one is true. But to Bai Ye's regret, he had no channels to get this creature. TSK. It seems that Li Ping'an has no choice but to suffer more. Bai Ye shook his head helplessly. Why is Li Ping'an the one who suffers? Nonsense. If Li Ping'an doesn't catch the monster when he finds it, who will? Otherwise, why would Bai Ye accept him? Since we can't get the heat-resistant property, we can only start with weapons. Bai Ye touched his chin, thought for a moment, and then began to make a plan. 2 days passed in a flash. Early in the morning, Bai Ye rented a business car and drove to a riverside outside the city. The lake and river in Longhu Park are connected to Qingjiang River. So in order to avoid being discovered, Bai Ye asked Li Ping'an to swim into Qingjiang River along the river in advance. Crash. There was a splash of water, and a tall figure climbed out of the water onto the shore. Master, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. After number 1 came ashore, he quickly came to Bai Ye and said, Number 1 is Li Pingon. Ever since Bai Ye went to him to arrange the plan, Li Pingon took the initiative to let go of the past and asked Bai Ye to give him a new name. After Bai Ye advised him a few times but he refused to listen, he simply gave him a code name, Number 1. How many times have I told you not to call me master? Hearing what Number 1 said, Bai Ye's mouth twitched, and he said unhappily, Owner? If you don't know, you might think Bai Ye is playing some special game. Yes, my lord. Number 1 responded quickly. Bai Ye. Never mind. It's better than the master. This name is only temporary and will be changed later. Bai Ye pursed her lips and gave up the idea of correcting the address. Hey, put this on. Bai Ye took out a large black robe with a tall hat from the car and handed it to Number 1. Number 1 took the black robe, quickly shook off the water stains on his body, and put it on. The wide black robe directly covered Number 1 completely. As long as you don't lift up your hat and clothes, you look no different from an ordinary person. Yeah, not bad. Looking at the concealing effect of the black robe, Bai Ye nodded with satisfaction. Okay, get in the car. It takes at least 6 hours to drive to Xiongang's orchard base, so Bai Ye must hurry and set off. 6 hours later, Bai Ye arrived at the town closest to the Xionggang orchard base smoothly. Hello? Where are you? After arriving in town, Bai Ye called Xionggang. Xionggang, tell me your location, and I'll come find you. Let me see. I'm across from this hair salon, Bai Ye said after looking around. Wait, I'll be right there. After getting the specific location, Xionggang hung up the call. Lie down and hide, and don't make any noise. After Bai Ye put down his phone, he turned and said to Number 1 in the back row. Upon hearing this, Number 1 quickly bent down and hid between the seats in the back row. After a while, a silver pickup truck stopped not far from Bai Ye. Then a bald, strong man about 1.9 meters tall got out of the car. Hello? Where are you, Bai? The bald, strong man picked up the phone, looked around and asked. Behind you? Bai Ye said as he honked the horn to remind them. Hearing the voice, the bald, strong man hurried over. Bai, you are really good. You even bought a car. Xionggang walked up to Bai Ye, who had just gotten out of the car, with a smile, patted the hood and said, I rented it. I just started working, so I don't have the money to buy a car. Bai Ye smiled and shook his head. Xionggang stepped forward and put his arm around Bai Ye's neck, saying enthusiastically, Forget it. Let's not talk about this for now. Let's go somewhere else and talk. In order to welcome you, I have specially asked someone to prepare a large table of food for you. Okay, you lead the way. Bai Ye responded with a smile. Next, Xionggang drove the pickup truck in front to lead the way, while Bai Ye followed closely behind. After leaving the town, Bai Ye drove for more than 10 minutes and finally arrived at an orchard. Driving straight in, Bai Ye soon followed Xionggang to a 2-story building. After parking the car, Xionggang walked quickly to Bai Ye and began to introduce him to her. This is where I usually live. After I graduated, my dad handed the base over to me, and he took my mom to enjoy his freedom. When Xionggang said this, he couldn't help but grit his teeth. This is not good. I have inherited such a large family business at such a young age. Looking at Xiongang's expression, Bai Ye couldn't help but tease. It would have been fine if Bai Ye hadn't said anything, but once he did, Xionggang got even angrier. What a bullshit. I'm here with my back to the sky and my face facing the earth, while they're at the beach, drinking wine and chatting. Mosquitoes suck me till they are full every day. They run all over the world. Puff. Hearing this, Bai Ye couldn't help but burst out laughing. You speak so fluently. Are you going to take the postgraduate entrance examination? If I can, I would rather take the postgraduate entrance examination. Xionggang looked at the surrounding orchards and complained gloomily. Well, don't say that I don't give you advice. I have a solution. Do you want to hear it? Bai Ye suddenly thought of something and said with a sly smile on his face. Xionggang looked at the smile on Bai Ye's face and knew that it was probably not a good idea, but He still wanted to listen. Tell me about it. You should find a partner and get married soon, then have a son. When your son grows up and graduates, you can do the same. When Xionggang heard this, the depressed look on his face suddenly turned into resentment, and his face instantly fell. I've thought of your idea a long time ago, but the problem is that the youngest female employees in my orchard are over 40 years old. There are basically no girls of my age in the nearest town. They all go to the city to work. Where can I find one? Bai Ye. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. I'll take you to a feast. Xionggang seemed to have gotten used to it. He quickly recovered his composure and pulled Bai Ye into the house. First floor, living room. A large round table was already filled with various delicacies. Sit down and eat and talk. Xionggang pushed Bai Ye down on a seat and started pouring wine for him. Since the two hadn't seen each other for a long time, Bai Ye didn't rush to ask about the phoenix and concentrated on communicating with Xionggang. After the meal, and the guests had a great time, Bai Ye finally asked the question in his mind. Oh, you mean the firebird? I said you came for it. I was going to call the police, but I kept it to myself because I thought you took it very seriously. Xionggang showed an expression as if he had seen through everything and said to Bai Ye with a smile. Bai Ye picked up the wine glass and looked at Xionggang in surprise. After a pause, he smiled and said, Thank you. What are you thanking me for? We are all brothers. Xionggang picked up the wine glass, clinked it with Bai Ye's, then drank it all in one gulp. Bai Ye smiled when he heard this, and without saying anything else, he drank the wine in the glass. But you drove for such a long time today and drank so much, so I suggest you go tomorrow. After putting down the wine glass, Xionggang suggested. Bai Ye nodded and said, Okay. After dinner, Xionggang took Bai Ye for a walk around the orchard. Just pick whatever you want to eat. Don't be polite with me. Xionggang waved his hand and said to Bai Ye in a very heroic manner. Bai Ye looked at the unripe peaches on the tree and curled her lips. It's not even cooked yet. How can I eat it? If you want to eat, I won't stop you, Xionggang said to Bai Ye with a smile. Bai Ye rolled his eyes at him speechlessly. Walking all the way to the top of Guishan Mountain, Xionggang brought Bai Ye to the back of the mountain and then pointed to a mountain in the distance. Now, that's the mountain I told you about. Bai Ye looked in the direction of Xiongang's finger and found that it was indeed the hill where the firebird landed in the video. After a rough estimate, it is about 1,000 meters away from here. Did you see it again later? Bai Ye turned around and asked. I saw him once afterwards, probably yesterday afternoon. After it fell and disappeared, I followed it with a drone, and although I didn't see it, I found a hole a little below the top of the mountain. Xionggang roughly pointed to the location of the cave, and then described the surrounding features. How about I take you there tomorrow? Xionggang suggested at this time. No, I can handle it. Bai Ye quickly shook his head and rejected Xiongang's proposal. Not to mention the unknown degree of danger of the firebird, even Xionggang might not be able to withstand the existence of number one. After being rejected by Bai Ye, Xionggang did not make any more suggestions. After pointing out the way to the pass to Bai Ye, the two began to go down the mountain. Along the way, Xionggang spoke much less, and his expression became heavier. Bai Ye knew what Xionggang was thinking, so he spoke first. Just ask whatever you want to ask. We are brothers. I will definitely tell you everything I can. Xionggang was stunned when he heard this, then looked at Bai Ye and remained silent for a few seconds. Haha, I can't hide it from you. Xionggang laughed at himself. Bai Ye didn't say anything. He knew Xionggang had something to ask, because he saw deep uneasiness in Xiongang's eyes. Recently, videos of various man-eating monsters have been circulating online, and I have seen quite a few of them. At first, I didn't believe them either, thinking they were just a prelude to some wuxia TV drama. But not until I saw that bird, the one I sent you. As Xionggang spoke, his expression became increasingly uglier, with a strong sense of uneasiness. Didn't I just tell you that I saw it yesterday? But unlike last time, there were two people hanging from its claws yesterday. At this point, Xiongang's voice began to tremble slightly, and the 1.9-meter tall man seemed to have shortened a few inches. Eat people. Bai Ye also fell silent after hearing this. After all, anyone would be terrified if they knew that there was such a man-eating monster living near them. Bai, I don't know if this is a secret, but what I want to ask is, where do these monsters come from? Will there be more and more of them? You know, my parents are still traveling outside right now, and I am very worried about their safety. Xionggang looked at Bai Ye with a pleading look, hoping to get the answer he wanted. Bai Ye looked at Xiongang's pleading eyes and was silent for a moment. Actually, I don't know the answers to the two questions you asked, but I guess there will be more and more monsters like this. Bai Ye was just an ordinary person not long ago. How could he know these secrets? But I still suggest that you ask your parents to come back as soon as possible or move to a safe city in advance. Bai Ye continued. The safe cities that Bai Ye refers to here are those cities with strong garrisons around them or large air defense shelters. As for why he didn't give Xionggang the origin to improve his strength, it was because Bai Ye didn't want Xionggang to become an outlier like number one. Of course, if Bai Ye finds a way to absorb the origin without changing his appearance, he will definitely give priority to Xionggang. Although he didn't get a definite answer, Xionggang knew that Bai Ye did not lie to him. Okay. Even if I have to pretend to be dead, I will trick my parents back. Xionggang fixed his eyes and said firmly. On the way back, Xionggang didn't ask about the monster again, and Bai Ye didn't mention it again. The next morning, just as the sky was getting light, Bai Ye got up early and drove to the target hilltop. After stopping the car, Bai Ye got out and looked up at the hazy mountaintop, then turned to number one and said, "Take your things and go up the mountain." Hearing this, number one opened the trunk of the car, took out a lot of packages and put them on his back. These are the equipment Bai Ye prepared to deal with the Firebird. The mountain was not very high, and Bai and Ye climbed to the top in just over 10 minutes. Then, after walking around the top of the mountain, they soon found the cave that Xionggang had mentioned. Seeing this, Bai Ye quickly signaled number one to remain quiet and tiptoed towards the cave entrance. Arriving at the cave entrance, Bai Ye looked at the burn marks around the cave entrance and was shocked. "Looks like this is it. Go and have a look." Bai Ye turned around and whispered an order to number one. Because of the integration of the essence of cat, number one has extremely high night vision and stealth capabilities, which is very suitable for reconnaissance. After receiving the order, number one gently put down his equipment and then approached the cave silently like a stealthy cat. After successfully arriving at the entrance of the cave, number one slowly bent down and stuck his head out to look inside the cave. The cave was not big, about 2 meters wide and 3 meters high. However, to number one's surprise, the cave was not as dark as expected, but was dimly lit. Upon seeing this, number one looked towards the depths of the cave. The next second, a large bird with a faint golden glow all over its body came into number one's sight. At this moment, even though number one had prepared himself mentally in advance, he was still so shocked that his pupils shrank. What kind of monster is this? Oh yeah, I'm a monster too. Number one changed his mind and quickly regained his composure. Then number one looked carefully and soon found that the golden light on the big bird was actually a layer of burning golden flames. Even though he was more than 10 meters away, number one could vaguely feel a slight burning sensation. After observing for a while, number one took out his mobile phone to record a video, then quietly retreated. How about it? Seeing that number one had retreated, Bai Ye took out his phone and typed. Seeing this, number one picked up his phone, watched the video, and handed it to Bai Ye. Bai Ye took the phone and read it, then nodded to number one. Let's get started. After receiving the order, number one immediately opened his backpack and took out something wrapped in layers of cloth. After removing the outer cloth, what came into view were 4 fire extinguishers tied together with tape. And there was a pack of explosives sandwiched between the 4 fire extinguishers. Let's use both together, Bai Ye said after taking a look. Upon hearing this, number one immediately took out an identical fire extinguisher and explosive pack from his bag. These 2 fire extinguisher explosive packs are fire extinguishing gift packs specially prepared by Bai Ye for the Firebird. I will use these 2 to consume the enemy first, and then let number one take the brunt of the attack. As for Bai Ye, he stepped aside and waited for his chance. After preparing the firefighting gift pack, number 1 put on some fire-avoiding equipment. For example, high-temperature resistant gloves, fireproof helmets, high-temperature resistant shields, heavy swords more than 1 meter long, etc. Bai Ye's equipment was much simpler, just a pair of heat-resistant shoes and a sharp, heavy sword. "My lord, I am ready." After number 1 was ready, he asked Bai Ye for instructions with a look of fighting spirit in his eyes. Although he knew that the monster in the cave was definitely not simple and its strength was beyond his understanding, he had no intention of retreating. Because he promised that his life belonged to Bai Ye and he would obey any order from Bai Ye, even to his death. "Well, go ahead and be careful." Bai Ye nodded to number 1 with some concern, then walked towards the top of the cave entrance with a knife in hand. After Bai Ye left, number 1 came out of the cave with 2 firefighting gift packs. Then he took out a lighter, lit the fuse, and quickly threw it into the cave. Clang! At this time, the big bird, who was sleeping soundly in the cave, was suddenly hit on the head by a heavy object. The big bird was suddenly awakened, and before it could get up to check, it was hit hard on the head by a heavy object again. Oh! The 2 consecutive heavy blows immediately angered the grumpy bird, which let out an angry cry. All of a sudden, the golden flames around the big bird suddenly surged, like a small sun, ready to rush towards the cave entrance. Bang! Bang! At this moment, 2 deafening explosions rang through the cave. Even Xionggang, who was standing on the top of Guashan Mountain and looking at the place from afar, couldn't help but feel excited. Is this the legendary physical exorcism? Xionggang heard the roar that sounded like a cannon and could not help but mutter in shock. At this time, Bai Ye, who was lying in ambush above the cave, heard the roar and suddenly felt the mountain under his feet shake. He was also shocked by the power of the fire-extinguishing gift pack. Bai Ye murmured in a low voice, "Damn, is it so powerful? Will he be killed directly by the explosion?" After the vibration disappeared, Bai Ye looked down at the cave that was emitting billowing white smoke and couldn't help but speculate in his heart. No, he's not dead. Outside the cave, number 1, who originally had the same idea as Bai Ye, suddenly realized that something was wrong and quickly took a few steps back. The next second, a figure with a hint of dim golden light suddenly rushed out of the cave and approached number 1 rapidly. Danger. With the keen intuition of a cat, number 1 instantly sensed a strong sense of danger, and he exerted force with his feet and dodged to the side. Boom! The moment number 1 dodged, a ball of scorching golden flame exploded at his original position, like a gorgeous golden lotus suddenly blooming. Oh! Accompanied by an angry cry, a tall figure appeared in the golden flames.
Comments.
At this time, the sky was gradually getting brighter, and the silhouette of the big bird came clearly into Bai Ye's eyes. The bird in the flames was very tall, and when it stood up it was half a head taller than number 1. And its body is very strong, like an eagle. However, after taking 2 fire-extinguishing shots, the big bird was in a very bad state. Only a few sparks of the brilliant golden flames remained, and the feathers on its wings and back were bald. Its entire body was covered in blood, especially on its back where there were 3 wounds deep enough to see the bones. Its right wing was drooping limply, and it looked like it was broken. After taking a closer look, Bai Ye estimated that the big bird's combat power had been reduced by at least 2/3. However, since he didn't know whether the big bird had any hidden tricks, Bai Ye didn't dare to take it lightly. Outside the cave, the pain all over his body could no longer suppress the anger in the bird's heart. It has never suffered such serious injuries since it came into this world. At the moment when the 2 fire-extinguishing gift packs exploded, if it had not reacted quickly and turned around in time to block most of the damage with its back and wings, otherwise it might have been blown to death by now. In extreme anger, the big bird opened its mouth and quickly spit out a fireball at number 1. Seeing this, number 1 quickly dodged and didn't dare to take it head-on. Boom! There was a dull thud, and the place where the fireball hit was like a cannonball exploding, creating a big hole. Looking at the big hole on the ground, Number one's pupils couldn't help but shrink, and the danger level of the big bird in his heart increased to a higher level again. Seeing that the attack missed, the big bird quickly turned around and spit out explosive fireballs at number one. However, this is not a threat to number one, who has the agility and responsiveness of a cat. With a few quick jumps, he avoided the attack of the big bird. Seeing that his attack was easily avoided by number one, the big bird cried out in anger again. Then he suddenly exerted force with his legs and rushed towards number one like an arrow. Damn it! Who says a big bird that can't fly is not as good as a chicken that walks on the ground? Seeing that the big bird that had lost its ability to fly and could burst out at such a fast speed relying only on its legs, Bai Ye was so shocked that his eyes widened. Seeing the big bird rushing towards him, number one quickly raised his heavy sword and swept it across. Bite! After a crisp sound, number one and Bai Ye in the distance both had their pupils shrink. I saw that the heavy sword that number one swept across was actually clamped tightly in the mouth of the big bird. In the shocked gaze of number one, a hint of human contempt flashed in Big Bird's eyes. Before number one could draw out his heavy sword, the big bird suddenly endured the severe pain, flapped its wings and flew into the air briefly. A pair of sharp claws grabbed towards number one fiercely. Seeing this, number one quickly let go of his heavy sword and dodged backwards, but he was still a step too late. The bird's sharp claws easily tore apart the fireproof armor bound to number one's chest. And even the armor on his chest was cut. Instantly, a stream of blood flowed out from the wound on number one's chest. But now number one had no time to check, because the big bird, which had succeeded in its attack, rushed over again. The pain from the wound quickly calmed number one down. Faced with the constant attacks from the big bird's sharp claws and beak, number one dodged while observing the big bird's movements. Soon, when the big bird lowered its head and pecked number one's head with its sharp beak, number one finally got the opportunity he had been looking for. Good opportunity. Bullet punch. The moment the big bird lowered its head, number one jumped over the big bird's head and landed behind it. Without waiting for the big bird to turn around, number one gathered his strength and launched a bullet punch, hitting the big bird on the head. The speed of a number one bullet fist was so fast that the big bird was blown away in just a moment. He stumbled all the way and rolled to the entrance of the cave. At this moment, Bai Ye, who was lying in ambush on the top of the cave, saw this and immediately realized that his opportunity had come. So he quickly stood up, raised his knife, and jumped up. Giant force. With the blessing of tremendous power, Bai Ye's sword fell like a meteorite from the sky. The head is broken and the stone is cracked. Bai Ye slashed with his knife, and the big bird's head and the stone on the ground were instantly split in two.
Quick!
Bring the sealed bag to collect the blood. After being beheaded, the big bird's blood gushed out instantly. Seeing this, Bai Ye hurriedly shouted to number one. Since it is an unknown monster with special abilities, everything on the big bird has extremely high research value. So these things cannot be wasted. Bai Ye plans to pack them all up and take them away. After hearing Bai Ye's order, number one quickly took out several large sealed bags from his bag and started collecting the big bird's blood. Bai Ye took advantage of this moment to walk towards the cave behind him. After entering the cave, Bai Ye took out a flashlight and shone it and was stunned. He was not frightened by the bloody feathers on the ground, nor by the shattered fragments on the wall. Instead, on the ground where the big bird was sleeping, Bai Ye saw a pile of bones and bloody pieces of clothing. For Bai Ye, who likes to watch short videos about solving murder cases when he has nothing to do, he recognized at a glance that the bones were human skeletons, and at a rough glance there were at least a dozen people. Monster, a man-eating monster? Bai Ye looked at the scene in front of him and suddenly remembered all the monster videos he had seen during this period. Basically, they were all about attacking humans. Basically, no monsters were seen attacking other creatures. Could it be that humans have a special attraction to those monsters? Bai Ye made a bold guess in his heart.
No.
We must start studying these monsters as soon as possible, otherwise we will be more passive when facing them in the future. Bai Ye discovered another characteristic of the monster, and the urgency in his heart deepened. After all, up to now, he still knew too little about monsters, which was far from enough for him to deal with future crises. After calming down, Bai Ye took out a bag and picked up the feathers on the ground one by one. After checking that there was nothing else, Bai Ye walked out. After Bai Ye came out, number 1 also finished packing the big bird's body. Fortunately, after the big bird died, the fire on its body also went out, otherwise it would have been difficult to pack up. Go find something to block the hole and cover it up, Bai Ye ordered number 1. Although from a moral point of view, Bai Ye should call the police and send the remains of the victims home. But in order to temporarily avoid exposing their identities and abilities, Bai Ye had no choice but to let them rest here forever. Please don't blame me for the revenge I have given you. Bai Ye turned and looked towards a cave, muttering to himself. Soon, number 1 found some big rocks and branches to block up the cave. Under the cover of branches and weeds, as long as you don't look closely, you can see that there is a cave here. In addition, this is a barren mountain and few people come here, so it should be possible to keep it secret for a long time. Let's go down the mountain. After looking back again, Bai Ye picked up the package and walked down the mountain. After going down the mountain, Bai Ye went to say goodbye to Xionggang, but Xionggang forced him to finish his lunch before leaving. Before leaving, Xionggang stuffed Bai Ye with many local specialties, which made the already overloaded business car even worse. When Bai Ye returned to Yunqing, it was already past 7 in the evening. Yunjiang River. Bai Ye drove to the place where number 1 had landed, intending to let him get off here and then swim back. But when Bai Ye arrived here, he found a person sitting by the river. Seeing this, Bai Ye was about to change places, but he accidentally saw a pile of wine bottles scattered around the man. Could it be? Bai Ye frowned when he saw this, then stopped the car and walked over. As soon as he approached, Bai Ye smelled a strong smell of alcohol, both white wine and beer. Dude, you can drink quite well, Bai Ye said as he stood beside the man. You don't need to persuade me. I won't jump into the river to commit suicide. The man spoke calmly, as if he knew what was in Bai Ye's mind. Hearing this, Bai Ye did not believe it in his heart, because he saw in the man the same determination to die that number 1 once had. Simply put, it means want to die. Why do you want to die? Bai Ye asked after a moment of silence. Then why do you want to live? The man asked calmly. Bai Ye was speechless for a moment, not knowing what to say, but he soon got the answer. To enjoy the beauty of the world, go see scenery you have never seen before. From obtaining the red crystal to planning to build an organization to resist future crises, Bai Ye has only one goal, which is to live a better life. There is no beauty in my world anymore, and those landscapes are boring to me. The man picked up the bottle and took a big gulp, then spoke in a very low voice. Can you tell me about it? Bai Ye was very curious about what kind of blow could make a grown man give up hope of living. The man didn't say anything after hearing this, but put down the bottle and turned to look at Bai Ye. Because the man had been looking down at the river, Bai Ye did not see his face. But when the man turned his face around, Bai Ye was suddenly startled. The man's head looked like it had been burned by fire, and he looked as hideous and terrifying as a demon. Not to mention children. Even an adult would be scared and dare not look directly at this face. However, having seen even more terrifying bloody humanoid monsters, Bai Ye adapted and regained his composure. After staring at each other for a few seconds, the man suddenly smiled and picked up the bottle again. You are the first person who dares to look me in the eye. Even my parents don't dare to look at me like that. The man couldn't help but feel better because of Bai Ye's performance, so he began to tell his story. The man's name is Liu Yan. He is 24 years old and a native of Yunqing. A year ago, Liu Yan returned from the army and planned to marry his girlfriend after settling down in work. But an accident destroyed everything for him. It was a season when catkins were flying everywhere. When Liu Yan went fishing in the suburbs to relax, he met 3 children around 10 years old playing on the lawn. Everything was normal, and Liu Yan started preparing for fishing as usual. But just as he took out his fishing equipment, he heard a scream behind him. Hearing the sound, Liu Yan quickly stood up and looked over. He saw catkins all over the ground that had been ignited by someone, and the fire was spreading rapidly. The three children on the lawn were so scared when they saw this that they ran away screaming and finally ran into a patch of dead grass. Lu Yan felt something was wrong when he saw this, because once the dry grass was ignited by the willow catkins, the three children inside would be in danger. So Lu Yan ran over quickly, but he was still a step too slow. The dry grass was ignited in an instant, and the fire burned fiercely, accompanied by the crying of children. At this moment, Lu Yan didn't care about anything else and rushed into the fire to save people. Despite suffering severe burns all over his body, Lu Yan finally rescued the three children. But this was the beginning of Lu Yan's misfortune. It is said that good people will be rewarded, but Lu Yan did not feel it. Because after he was sent to the hospital, the parents of the three children never showed up. Later, the police checked the surveillance footage and found out that the fire was actually started by the three children, and then they found their parents. As the three children were too young, the police could not impose any punishment. The only thing they could do was to ask the three companies to pay a fine, give them some criticism and education, and then the matter was closed. However, when talking about compensation for Lu Yan, the three parents spoke out without shame. It wasn't them who asked Lu Yan to rescue him, so what does it have to do with them if he got injured? None of them were willing to bear Lu Yan's medical expenses and tried to evade responsibility. Finally, after arguments among the police, Lu Yan's family and them, the three families each paid 15,000 yuan, totaling 45,000 yuan in compensation to Lu Yan. The matter ended here, but Lu Yan's pain continued. Due to extensive burns all over his body, Lu Yan had almost no good skin left, so even skin grafting would be very difficult. At this point, Lu Yan's face was completely disfigured. After lying in the hospital for a month, Lu Yan returned home to recuperate. At first, his girlfriend and parents took care of him together, but after just 2 months, the girlfriend couldn't stand Lu Yan's hideous face and ugly skin, coupled with family pressure. After a difficult decision, I finally chose to break up with tears. Lu Yan did not blame her, but just gently wiped away her tears and agreed to her breakup. Lu Yan's parents did not blame her. After giving her their sincere blessings, they gave her a gold bracelet that they had prepared long ago for her to use in changing her name in the future. From then on, it was only Lu Yan's parents who took care of Lu Yan until he recovered. After Lu Yan recovered, his parents, who had heart problems, could not stand the shock of Lu Yan's face from time to time and eventually moved to live with Lu Yan's eldest brother. But they still come back to see him from time to time, every month. However, Lu Yan knew that this frequency was gradually decreasing. On weekdays, Lu Yan seldom went out because his appearance often attracted many strange looks and gossips. Most of the time he stayed at home, surrounded by loneliness. After listening to Lu Yan's self-narration, Bai Ye thought of a classic saying, "If you didn't hit it, why do you caress it?" Although the two have different meanings, the underlying logic is the same. Do you regret it? Bai Ye asked after a moment of silence. I neither regret it, nor do I regret it. Lu Yan responded directly, as if he already knew the answer. I don't regret saving those 3 children. After all, they were still young and ignorant. What I regret is that I shouldn't have hidden behind my parents and seen the ugly faces of the other parents. I should have stood up bravely. Let them take responsibility. Bai Ye guessed. No, we should take out our cell phone and upload this matter to the internet. Lu Yan shook his head and said, and then stir up the anger of the majority of netizens and expose them? Bai Ye's eyes lit up when he heard this and continued. You're only half right. Lu Yan continued in a very calm tone. Then stir up the anger of the majority of netizens, attract more social attention, and finally sell goods through live streaming. Live streaming to sell goods. Bai Ye's brain suddenly froze when he heard this, and he looked at Lu Yan in surprise. Yes, with such high popularity, why not live broadcast and sell goods? After all, if I bring in goods a few times, I can directly achieve financial freedom. How much money can these 3 companies lose? Lu Yan's tone was flat, as if he was talking about an insignificant matter. You know what? It seems to actually work. After thinking for a while, Bai Ye had to admit that Lu Yan's method was indeed the best solution. Not only did it expose the shameless faces of the three parents, but it also allowed them to make a lot of money, which was more than enough to go abroad for plastic surgery to restore their original appearance. Have you ever thought about taking revenge on those three families? After collecting his thoughts, Bai Ye looked at Lu Yan with interest and asked, I've thought about it, but there's no need. Lu Yan said after drinking the last sip of wine in the bottle and taking a long breath. If you were given a chance to change your appearance and gain powers far beyond those of ordinary people, what would you most want to do? That's right. After some understanding, Bai Ye took a fancy to Lu Yan and wanted to bring him under his command. What do you want to do most? Lu Yan looked at the river with blurry eyes and said thoughtfully, I want to see how she is doing now. If it weren't for the fire, she would have been his wife now. Now you may even have a child. Then what? Bai Ye asked. Then quietly withdraw from her world and try to forget her. Lu Yan smiled with an open-minded tone. After a breakup, a thorn was inevitably planted in the hearts of both Lu Yan and his ex-girlfriend. Even if we get back together, this thorn will always be with us. After all, it's mist, and there's no way back to the past. If I give you this opportunity, are you willing to pay the price, including your life? Bai Ye stared into Lu Yan's eyes and asked solemnly. Lu Yan did not reply, but looked at Bai Ye and smiled, obviously taking Bai Ye's words as a joke. Seeing this, Bai Ye was not angry. He raised his hand and waved behind him. Sober him up. Lu Yan raised his head drunkenly and looked at Bai Ye in confusion. Before he could react, a huge force lifted him up. Plop. A splash of water rose high, and a scream could be heard faintly. Immediately afterwards, a black shadow flashed by quickly, and number 1 also jumped into the river. Help, Gula! Just as Lu Yan struggled to float up, a big hand grabbed his neck and pushed him back into the water. In the following time, number 1 grabbed Lu Yan and dipped him up and down in the river water like he was eating hot pot. 5 minutes later, wet all over and pale, Lu Yan lay powerlessly on the shore, gasping for breath. Do you still want to die now? Bai Ye asked with a smile while standing aside. Who? Ha. No. I don't want to think about it anymore. Lu Yan shook his head weakly. That feeling of suffocation is too uncomfortable. I'd better take sleeping pills. Bai Ye smiled when he heard that. He knew that Lu Yan was joking with the last sentence. After a long while, Lu Yan, who had regained some strength, sat up and turned to thank Bai Ye. Thank you. You made me feel the beauty of life again. You should thank him, not me. Bai Ye raised his chin and motioned Lu Yan to look to the other side. Seeing this, Lu Yan turned his head and looked. After just one glance, his brain lost the ability to think, and he stared blankly at number 1 under the moonlight. It seems I'm still drunk and I'm hallucinating. Lu Yan gave a wry smile, then supported himself with his hands and moved his butt backwards, trying to get away from number 1. Are you still drunk? Easy. The next second, a big hand reached out to Lu Yan's neck. Crash. Help, Galu. Just like that, Lu Yan, who had just recovered from his shock, felt the familiar feeling of suffocation again. After rinsing him in the water for a few times, number 1 put Lu Yan back on the ground. Hoo-ha. Hoo-ha. After being forced awake, Lu Yan wiped the water stains off his face and gasped heavily. Are you sober now? Bai Ye squatted down and asked with a smile. Lu Yan nodded quickly and said, Awake. Awake. It's good to wake up. Bai Ye nodded in satisfaction and asked the question again. Lu Yan calmed down after hearing this, thought for a moment and asked, Can I refuse? Bai Ye nodded and said, Okay, but you have to keep our affairs a secret. After a moment of silence, Lu Yan looked at number 1 and asked again, Will he become like him? Uncertain. Bai Ye also didn't know what changes would occur after absorbing the essence of the fire bird. Okay, I agree. I am a monster anyway. Lu Yan laughed at himself. You are not a monster. Those in human skin are. Bai Ye said softly. Haha, maybe. Lu Yan looked at his hands in the moonlight. How ugly. In the suburbs, in an abandoned building, Bai Ye handed a glass bottle filled with golden liquid to Lu Yan. You still have the chance to regret it now. Bai Ye stared at Lu Yan and said, Since I followed you here, I won't regret it. Lu Yan took the glass bottle, looked at the golden liquid inside, then opened it and drank it. Stand back a little. Bai Ye stepped back and gave instructions to number 1. Just when Bai Ye and number 1 had just retreated 5 meters. After drinking the essence of the golden flame eagle, Lu Yan suddenly ignited a layer of golden flames. The golden flame eagle is the name Bai Ye gave to the firebird. Ah! Wrapped in the golden flames, Lu Yan instantly let out a cry of pain and quickly slapped his body, trying to extinguish the golden flames. But as time went by, the golden flame on Lu Yan's body became stronger and stronger, and soon all his clothes were burned to ashes. It's so hot! Although he was several meters away from Lu Yan, Bai Ye still felt a scorching heat wave coming towards him. The temperature in the entire room suddenly rose by at least 20 degrees. Get out of the room first. Seeing this, Bai Ye hurriedly left the room with number 1 and stood outside the door to observe. As time went by, Lu Yan's fusion began to enter the next stage. The muscles in Lu Yan's legs began to contract, becoming extremely tense, and his feet also began to deform, changing into the shape of eagle claws. At the same time, a pair of flesh wings slowly grew out from Lu Yan's back, continuously extending and unfolding until they grew to more than 3 meters long before slowly stopping. Then, golden feathers began to grow on the fleshy wings, shining brightly under the reflection of the golden flames. Outside the door, number 1 looked at Lu Yan's golden feathers, then looked at his own light green armor. After a moment's silence, he curled his lips in disdain. When Bai Ye saw the golden wings burning behind Lu Yan, his pupils shrank and a high-pitched female voice suddenly rang in his mind. Eternally burning wings, lift me out of this world of perdition. Lu Yan's mutation lasted for about an hour. After the golden flame dissipated, a golden figure appeared in front of Bai Ye. Gold Saint. Looking at Lu Yan's mutated appearance, Bai Ye couldn't help but flash an anime character in his mind. Since Lu Yan's entire body was covered in golden feathers, it looked as if he was wearing a suit of golden armor. Coupled with his red gold eyes, he looks extremely oppressive. How do you feel? Bai Ye asked, walking forward with a notebook. Lu Yan looked at himself absent-mindededly, and then gently fanned the wings behind him. I couldn't help but sigh. I'm fine now. Show me your abilities. Bai Ye nodded and continued. Hearing this, Lu Yan looked around and shook his head, saying, It's too narrow here. I can't move freely. Bai Ye. Then go to the yard outside. So the 3 of them quickly came to the yard. Bai Ye and number 1 stood under the eaves, leaving the entire yard for Lu Yan to show. Standing in the open space, Lu Yan nodded to Bai Ye and began to demonstrate his first ability. Lu Yan's golden pupils flashed, and a scorching golden flame quickly rose from Lu Yan's body, wrapping him up. I call this move Golden Flame Body Protection. It can help me resist damage and also increase my flying speed. Then, Lu Yan opened his mouth and spit out a fireball towards the empty space beside him. The fireball exploded instantly when it touched the ground, and its power was no less than that of the fireball spit out by the golden flame eagle. Next, Lu Yan showed his golden pupils again, and he could see the leaves more than 1,000 meters away clearly. At Bai Ye's request, Lu Yan demonstrated the changes in his speed, strength, defense, 5 senses, etc. In general, if it was a face-to-face fight on the ground, Lu Yan and number 1 would have a 30 to 70 chance of winning. But if Lu Yan flies, then the winning rate of the 2 may be reversed. Oh, by the way, I still have one ability that I haven't shown yet. After completing Bai Ye's test, Lu Yan spoke up to remind him. Oh, let's start. Bai Ye looked up at Lu Yan and nodded. After receiving Bai Ye's signal, Lu Yan stood still and took a deep breath. Then a golden light quickly covered Lu Yan's whole body. Under the shocked gazes of Bai Ye and number 1, the changes that appeared on Lu Yan's body were disappearing rapidly. Feathers, claws, wings, golden pupils, all disappeared in the end. After a short while, Lu Yan regressed back to his normal appearance. Compared with the original state, The only change is that the skin all over the body has returned to normal. Am I back to my original form? At this moment, even Liu Yan himself looked at his hands in disbelief, unable to believe his eyes. Seeing that Liu Yan had actually recovered his original appearance, number one beside him couldn't help but show a hint of envy in his eyes. Although he voluntarily became what he is now, who would be willing to abandon their human body and become a monster away from ordinary people. Can you change back again? Bai Ye asked tentatively after checking Liu Yan's condition. Can. As he spoke, Liu Yan was once again enveloped in golden light. Wings and golden feathers quickly grew out from behind him, and he soon returned to his previous appearance. Sure enough, the origins of those monsters are indeed special. Bai Ye looked at Liu Yan with surprise, his heart filled with joy. If I could turn back into a normal person at any time, my next actions would be much easier. Soon Liu Yan turned back into his normal human form. After all, compared to the mutant form, he liked the human appearance more. Bai Ye patted Liu Yan and asked, "Can you still use your special abilities in this state?" Liu Yan closed his eyes and felt it for a while, then shook his head. Besides being a little stronger and having better eyesight, you can't use your other abilities. After Bai Ye wrote down this information in his notebook, he put it away. I'll give you 1 day to complete what you want to do. When you're done, you can go to Longhu Park and wait for me. Oh yeah, don't reveal your special abilities. When they parted, Bai Ye warned Liu Yan seriously. Yes, my lord. Liu Yan quickly stood at attention and nodded solemnly in response. Bai Ye, who was getting in the car, was stunned when he heard this. He glanced at number one unhappily before starting the car and leaving. Hey, I haven't gotten in the car yet. It was not until he saw Bai Ye's car driving away that Liu Yan realized that he was now in the suburbs, and he shouted loudly. But at this time, Bai Ye could no longer hear his shout, and directly left Liu Yan's sight. Liu Yan, fly back.
No.
You can't reveal your abilities. After thinking it over, Liu Yan finally took out his mobile phone and opened the taxi-hailing app. Looking at the driver on the map, who was expected to arrive in half an hour, Liu Yan couldn't help but complain. Fortunately, the master remembered to give me a set of clothes and a mobile phone before leaving, otherwise I would have to run back naked today. After returning home, Bai Ye sorted out the data recorded in the notebook and put it in a small safe. Money, intelligence, monster origins, laboratories, and scientific researchers. Bai Ye wrote down the things he needed most at the moment on a piece of paper. After thinking for a moment, Bai Ye finally nodded heavily at the scientific researchers.
It is summer now.
Although Bai Ye has preserved the body of the golden flame eagle in time, it is a waste to leave it there. Therefore, Bai Ye must find professional scientific researchers as soon as possible to conduct a deeper study on the golden flame eagle's corpse. It's not easy to find scientific researchers. Bai Ye rested his hands on the table, supported his chin, frowned, and pondered. The top scientific researchers are monopolized by the state, universities, and large enterprises. If Bai Ye wanted to poach people, not only would the researchers not be willing, but even the people behind them would not let them go. By that time, not only will others not be able to dig it out, but you will also get yourself involved. As for mid-level researchers, they pay more attention to salary and benefits. But the problem is that Bai Ye is not sure about his character. Finally, there are the low-level researchers, whom Bai Ye is not considering for the time being. After all, there are too few monster materials at the moment, and they cannot afford to be wasted. After thinking for a while, Bai Ye decided to look online to see if there were any special talents. Sure enough, hard work pays off. After 2 hours of searching, Bai Ye really found a special, top biological talent. Feng Chun, a genius biologist, the youngest doctor of biology, the genius who is most likely to become the youngest academician. There are many more titles about Feng Chun, and a lot of his scientific research achievements are listed. Although Bai Ye couldn't understand it, it felt very grand. However, such a genius, a rising star in the field of biology, unexpectedly died at his most shining moment. According to news reports, Feng Chun was hit on the head with a steel pipe during a robbery by 3 hooligans and fainted on the spot. Despite the strenuous rescue efforts of a group of experts, he still suffered from high-level paralysis and completely lost consciousness below the head. Brain injury? It looks like there may be a neurological problem. Bai Ye then searched for Fong Chen's medical report, and it indeed stated that the paralysis was caused by nerve damage. When it comes to nerve repair, the first thing that comes to Bai Ye's mind is the salamander, which has the title of immortal body. Salamanders have extremely strong regenerative abilities. They can not only regenerate external tissues such as limbs and tails, but can also restore damaged brains. So, when Bai Ye thought of brain damage, the first thing that came to his mind was the salamander. Thinking of this, Bai Ye quickly checked and found that they were sold online, so he quickly placed an order and bought two. Bai Ye was still a little worried about the salamander essence alone. If Fong Chen absorbed the salamander essence and turned into a monster that couldn't live without water, then Bai Ye's work was in vain, right? So, after thinking it over, Bai Ye decided to add another layer of insurance. 2 days later, Bai Ye saw a local person post a video about a monster on a short video website. It was on a mountain in the suburbs. A group of hikers accidentally captured a strange black shadow running quickly through the jungle. After zooming in on the video screenshot, the group discovered that it was actually a black monster with a pointed head, a mouth full of fangs, and crawling on all fours. And behind the monster, there were several long tails. After watching the video, Bai Ye immediately called Lu Yan. Lu Yan, come and pick me up right now. After hanging up the phone, Bai Ye immediately packed up his things and quickly came to the nearby Longhu Park. In a remote pavilion by the lake, Bai Ye picked up a wooden stick that he had hidden nearby and hit the water surface 3 times. Soon ripples appeared on the surface of the lake, and a black shadow jumped out of the water under the pavilion and quickly emerged to the surface. Come up quickly. There is a mission, Bai Ye said quickly while looking at number 1 in the water. Upon hearing this, number 1 immediately dragged a sealed waterproof bag out of the water and quickly climbed ashore. Then he opened the waterproof bag and took out a loose black robe and put it on. When Bai Ye and number 1 arrived at the pickup point, Lu Yan was already waiting there in his car. Get to this mountain as fast as you can. After getting in the car, Bai Ye sent the location of the mountain in the video to Lu Yan and asked him to get to the mountain as quickly as possible. Although Bai Ye has not yet encountered or heard of the country's special department for monsters, Bai Ye believes that they must exist. So, Bai Ye must catch the monster in the video before this special department. Hearing the urgency in Bai Ye's tone, Lu Yan quickly exerted 100% of his strength and rushed to the target location at the fastest speed in compliance with traffic regulations. Today is Monday and the sun is very hot, so no one else comes to climb the mountain. After arriving at the location of the mountain in the video, Bai Ye weighed the pros and cons again and again, then turned to Lu Yan and ordered, "Fly up to the sky and find it in the mountain." Having said that, Bai Ye sent the video and video screenshots to Lu Yan. Lu Yan quickly finished watching the video and taking screenshots. After roughly noting down the monster's physical features, he began to take off his clothes. Alas, I have to take off my clothes every time I transform. When will this problem be solved? Lu Yan complained as he took off his clothes. Because Lu Yan's wings would tear through his clothes when he changed his form, he had to take off his clothes first to avoid damage. After a moment, golden wings spread out from behind Lu Yan. With a flap of the wings, Lu Yan turned into a shadow and soared into the sky. At the same time, in a hidden base in Yunqing, everyone in the squad, assemble. Inside the indoor training ground, an officer shouted loudly while holding a tablet. After a while, a small team of 9 members quickly assembled. A monster has appeared in Qingwu Mountain in the eastern suburbs of Yunqing. It is predicted to be level 2. Try to capture it alive while ensuring your own safety. The officer holding the tablet quickly read out the mission and then showed a video to the men on the tablet. And this video was exactly the short video that Bai Ye had seen before. Make sure to complete the mission. After learning about the mission information, team leader Chen Yi quickly gave a loud assurance. After the officer left, a small team of members quickly began to put on their equipment. Is this your nth mission this month? This is the 5th time. Alas, I don't know where these monsters came from. Each one is stranger than the other. Who cares? We just need to eliminate these monsters before they hurt people. There will be special people to take care of the rest. I don't know if you've noticed, but the monsters that have appeared recently are getting stronger and stronger. I heard that last time Team 3 encountered a 3-striped monster, and they were almost wiped out. Alright, stop talking nonsense and get going. At this time, Captain Chun-Yi interrupted the discussion of several people.
Yes.
Captain. Times 8.
Turn your attention back to Bai Ye.
With the advantage of the sky and vision, Lu Yan soon found the target's trace. My lord, I found it. Lu Yan quickly reported the news to Bai Ye. Come back and lead the way. Bai Ye decided immediately. After finishing the call with Lu Yan, Bai Ye turned to look at number 1. Get your stuff ready, and follow Lu Yan to capture the target later. He doesn't have to be alive. Yes, my lord. Number 1 responded quickly upon hearing this. Then number 1 got out of the car, opened the trunk, and took out the heavy sword and some auxiliary equipment that he had prepared long ago. After Lu Yan came back, number 1, under his leadership, rushed straight into the forest. On a sunny stone, a black monster with 6 tentacles was lying on it, enjoying the sunshine and taking a lazily nap. There was a pool of blood and some scattered meat beside it. Obviously, it had just eaten. Quick victory. In the deep jungle nearby, number 1 and Lu Yan looked at each other, and then started to act. With the help of the trees, number 1 quickly and quietly approached the monster. Lu Yan came to an open place, spread his wings and flew high, approaching quickly from the sky. When number 1 sneaked to the best attack point, he made a gesture in the air. Seeing this, Lu Yan, who was hovering in the sky, quickly flapped his wings, and golden flames emerged from his body. He dived towards the monster on the stone at a rapid speed like a falling meteorite. Perhaps sensing danger, the monster that was napping on the stone suddenly opened its eyes and looked up. But it was all too late. There was only a flash of golden light, and the monster suddenly rolled off the stone as if it had been hit violently. When the monster stopped rolling, we saw that its neck was torn open with blood gushing out. And there was a ball of golden flame burning around the wound. Roar. After stabilizing its body, the monster let out a terrified roar and turned to rush into the jungle. He intended to use the cover of the woods to prevent Lu Yan from continuing his attack, but this happened to fall into number 1's trap. On a big tree in front of the monster's escape, number 1 held the heavy knife tightly, staring at the monster's rapidly approaching figure, and began to frantically calculate the timing of the attack in his mind. In order to cooperate with number 1, Lu Yan dived down from the air again, but this time his speed was much slower. Sure enough, when the monster saw the familiar golden light falling from the sky, it quickly sped up. He was only paying attention to Lu Yan in the air and was not alert at all to the jungle ahead. Just as the monster stepped into the attack range set by number 1, number 1 quickly jumped up with his knife and chopped hard at the monster below. The monster, who was fully focused on Lu Yan at this moment, had not yet reacted when number 1's heavy sword struck it hard on the head. Roar! An angry roar echoed through the mountains and forests, startling a flock of birds. Not good. Number 1's knife was originally intended to chop the monster's neck to enlarge the wound left by Lu Yan. But the monster suddenly turned around, and the fatal blow fell on its head. However, because the monster's skull was very hard, not only did number 1's sword fail to kill it, but the heavy sword also got stuck in the monster's skull. After being attacked twice in a row, the monster became more and more furious. Now that Lu Yan's threat was gone, the monster's bloodthirsty gaze fell on number 1. With a roar, the 6 tentacles on the monster's back locked onto number 1, who was riding on its back like deadly venomous snakes. When number 1 saw this, alarm bells immediately rang in his heart, because the tips of those tentacles were actually sharp bone spurs. Seeing that there was no time to dodge, number 1 simply fixed his eyes, loosened his hand that was drawing the sword, and quickly clenched his right fist. Bullet punch. In an instant, number 1's right fist slammed heavily on the back of the knife. The huge impact force caused the blade to penetrate deeper. The severe pain in the head that felt like it was being torn apart instantly made the monster lose its ability to resist and fall to the ground, with its 6 tentacles also falling limply. Seeing this, Number 1 quickly took the opportunity to deliver a few more punches, and only after he had hammered the entire blade into the monster's head did he let out a long breath. "Are you okay?" Seeing that something was wrong, Liu Yan quickly landed. "It's okay. Hurry up and pack your things. Don't waste your blood." Number 1 didn't even have time to rest. He quickly got up, took out the sealed bag, and started packing. With Liu Yan's help, the two packed very quickly. "Huh? What is this?" After Number 1 pulled the heavy knife out of the monster's head, he suddenly found a black crystal in the monster's head. This black crystal seemed to have special magic power and instantly attracted Number 1's attention. So Number 1 immediately took out the black crystal. The black crystal is about the size of a pigeon egg, with 2 mysterious lines printed on its surface. "I don't know, but I can feel that this crystal is definitely a good thing. My body seems to be very eager for it." Liu Yan stared at the black crystal in Number 1's hand, and a hint of desire unconsciously appeared in his eyes. "Never mind. Take it back to show the master first." Although Number 1 was very confused as to why he did not have the feeling that Liu Yan described, he knew that he had to bring the prey back as soon as possible. Number 1 put the black crystal away separately, and then began to pack up the monster's body. "You lead the way, and I'll carry it." After packing, Number 1 carried the monster's corpse and said to Liu Yan, "Okay." Liu Yan nodded and prepared to take off. But at this moment, a burst of fierce gunfire interrupted them. Liu Yan and Number 1 were startled when they heard the sound, and quickly looked towards the place where the gunshot came from. Judging from the volume of the sound, it was probably about 300 meters away from the two people. "You take the prey back first, I'll go take a look." Number 1 put the monster's body on the ground, said something to Liu Yan, and then rushed towards the direction where the gunshots came from. "Be careful." After seeing this, Liu Yan gave a warning, grabbed the monster's corpse, and flew down the mountain. As Number 1 got closer, in addition to the sound of gunfire, he also keenly heard the shouts of humans and the roars of monsters. Sure enough, when Number 1 arrived at the top of a slope, he found several soldiers fighting a monster below. What surprised Number 1 was that this monster looked very similar to the one he had killed before, except that it was twice as big. Bang, bang, bang. Da, da, da. "Captain, this isn't a 2-stripe monster at all. It's at least a 3-stripe monster." Seeing that ordinary bullets did little damage to the monster in front of them, a soldier quickly shouted to the captain through the headset, "I have requested support from the headquarters. We will be there in 10 more minutes." Chun-Yi responded to everyone while shooting wildly at the monster's head. Roar. At this time, the monster that was being targeted let out a roar and ran quickly, dodging the bullets from all around. After all, although these bullets cannot penetrate the monster's muscles, they still hurt when they hit its body and will cause bleeding. "Ah! Save me." At this moment, the monster's 2 tentacles quickly pierced into the 2 tree trunks and then shot out like a slingshot and landed next to the 2 soldiers. The soldier, who had no time to dodge, was instantly pierced by 2 tentacles and hung up. "Cease fire." Seeing the scene, Chun-Yi quickly ordered a ceasefire to avoid accidental injuries to the 2 teammates. 6 sons. Brother Tiger. Seeing their 2 teammates being pierced through the body and hung up, the other soldiers shouted anxiously. Seeing that the enemies had stopped attacking, the clever monster quickly realized that it had 2 important bargaining chips. Then he stretched out the tentacles with 2 warriors hanging on them and blocked the 2 warriors in front of him. "Captain, what should we do now?" a soldier asked anxiously with tears in his eyes. The former teammates were used as shields to block the enemy. Although the soldiers were furious, they did not dare to shoot again and could only watch their teammates struggle in front of them. What to do? Chun-Yi also wanted to know the answer to this question. It was not right to fight now, nor was it right not to fight. Even if we delay time and wait for rescue, those 2 teammates can't wait. By the time the rescue arrived, both of them had bled to death. In this way, the battlefield fell into a stalemate. "No. It wants to run away. At this moment, a warrior noticed that the monster not far away began to retreat. It was obvious that the monster had realized that this method would not last long, so he decided to retreat. Damn it! Are we just going to watch it run away? The other warriors glared at the monster's actions, but did not dare to take action. They could only watch it retreat into the jungle little by little. Just when everyone was at a loss, the two warriors hanging on the tentacles raised their heads shakily. After smiling at each other, they took something off their bodies. Look at Leozi and Brother Hu. At this time, someone noticed the actions of the two and quickly spoke up to remind them. They want to—
No.
No. Captain, think of a solution quickly. Leozi, Brother Hu, don't do anything stupid. Looking at the two's actions, the others quickly understood what they were going to do next and started shouting. Sixth Son, Big Tiger. Chun-Yi held the gun tightly in his hands and watched the scene with bloodshot eyes. The two of them moved very slowly, as if they had exhausted all their strength. After completing the last step, the two looked in the direction of their teammates and slowly uttered two silent words with their bloody mouths. Take care of yourself. Bang! Bang! With two loud bangs, the two tentacles of the monster were instantly blown off and flew out along with the two corpses. Roar! The severe pain from the broken tentacle caused the monster to roar. But before it could react, a barrage of bullets came towards it. Hit me hard. After Chun-Yi let out an angry roar, he raised his gun and shot at the monster while quickly approaching. Seeing this, the other teammates also rushed out from the cover and charged with Chun-Yi. Bang, bang, bang. Da-da-da. Bang. Dense bullets mixed with RPG shells rained down on the monster. The intense pain caused the monster to flee in a hurry and rush into the jungle desperately. Although Chun-Yi and his teammates were filled with rage and wanted to vent, they could not catch up with the monster as it was determined to escape. All they could do was watch the monster disappear into the jungle. Two teammates died, but the monster was not left. The huge guilt and grief made a soldier kneel down and shout unwillingly. The other soldiers felt the same way when they saw this. They clenched their guns tightly and wanted to continue the pursuit. Don't chase them. The rescue team will be here soon. Although Chun-Yi also wanted to catch up, reason overcame impulse, and he quickly gave the order. Team leader, that's enough.
Stop talking.
Let's clean up Leozi and Dahu. Chun-Yi interrupted his teammates and spoke in a low voice. After hearing the captain's words, everyone fell silent. Just as the soldiers began to act, Number 1 on the hillside touched the heavy sword behind him, thought for a moment, and then ran quickly in the direction where the monster escaped. Bai Ye listened to Lu Yan's story, thought for a moment, and frowned. Apart from terrorists, the only ones who could launch such a fierce gun battle in the country are the government. Since the monster has been killed by Number 1 and Lu Yan, who are they fighting against? Is there more than one monster in this mountain? Bai Ye quickly thought of this possibility, so after thinking about it, he turned to Lu Yan and said, Go and see what's going on, and ask Number 1 to come back as soon as possible. Yes, my lord. Lu Yan nodded quickly in response. By the way, don't expose yourself. When Lu Yan was about to leave, Bai Ye reminded him again. After Lu Yan left, Bai Ye looked around, got in the car, started the car, and drove to a secluded place. On the other side, after chasing for a while, Number 1 quickly caught up with the injured monster. It turned out that after being injured, this monster ran to the place where Number 1 had just hunted a monster, which was the smaller monster. The injured monster sniffed the stone and quickly ran under a tree. Looking at the bloodstains that had not yet dried on the ground and smelling the scent in the air, it soon realized that its companion had met with an accident. Roar! The pain of losing a companion is far greater than the pain it suffers. The angry monster began to indiscriminately attack everything around it, venting its anger. Could that monster be its mate? Number 1, who was hiding in the dark, watched this scene and couldn't help but speculate in his heart. If so, it's such a coincidence. Number 1 looked at the knife in his hand, and his eyes began to become a little strange. Forget it. No matter if it's him or not, send them to meet each other. Number 1 clenched the knife in his hand and slowly approached the mad monster. This monster was twice as big as the previous one, and its combat power was even more terrifying. If it hadn't been seriously injured, and its health had dropped by more than 70%, Number 1 wouldn't have dared to attack alone. However, the real source of Number 1's confidence comes from the bloody hole in the monster's ribs, which is large enough to see its internal organs. After destroying a large area of trees, the monster's anger subsided a lot. Feeling the injuries on his body, the monster immediately decided to find a place to heal. So the monster looked around and ran towards the back mountain. At this time, Number 1 looked at the direction the monster was heading. His eyes flashed, and he quickly stood up and rushed to the front to ambush. Since the monster was injured, its speed was naturally not as fast as Number 1. So soon Number 1 got ahead of it and hid behind a huge rock. In order to increase the chances of a sneak attack, Number 1 thought for a moment, took out the black crystal that had been placed separately and carefully placed it on the boulder. After doing all this, Number 1 took the knife and hid behind the boulder. At the same time, Liu Yan, who had returned, also discovered him. After seeing the injured monster, he instantly understood Number 1's plan. So he flew low for a while, using a shadow on the ground to remind Number 1 that he was coming. Captain, why hasn't the rescue team arrived yet? The teammate who was always thinking of revenge saw that the rescue team had not arrived yet, so he asked anxiously. Almost there. Because a 3-striped monster suddenly appeared in the city just now, the rescue team's helicopter and half of the people rushed to rescue people first. The others have reached the bottom of the mountain and are now approaching rapidly. Chunyi told everyone the notice he had just received. Damn monster. I will avenge Liuzi and Tiger Brother no matter what.
Yes.
Beat it into a sieve. Compared to this, I am more worried about whether Liuzi and Huge's family can accept this news. With these words, everyone present fell into deathly silence. After a moment of silence, Chunyi slowly said, After this is over, I will take them home. I can accept beatings or scoldings. Count me in. Count me in. Upon hearing this, others also spoke up. Okay, we'll go together then. Chunyi looked at everyone and said with a forced smile. Feeling the heavy footsteps getting closer, Number 1 couldn't help but tighten the knife in his hand. After looking up at the sky, Number 1 silently began the countdown in his mind. At the same time, the fleeing monster suddenly sensed a familiar breath. So he quickly stopped and looked in the direction where the breath came from, and soon he saw the black crystals on the boulder. Although the monster had some guesses in his mind, when he saw the black crystal emitting a familiar aura, he still found it hard to accept it and rushed over without thinking. It rushed to the boulder. Because the boulder was too high, the monster immediately raised its front legs to rest on the boulder and stretched its head to bite the black crystal. At this time, Number 1, who was hiding behind a boulder, saw this and realized that the time had come. He rushed out from behind the boulder without hesitation and inserted the knife into the monster's wound. Without any muscle blocking it, Number 1's knife penetrated the monster's internal organs without any hindrance. The sudden severe pain made the monster realize that it had been ambushed, so it ignored the black crystal and tried to escape quickly. Seeing this, Number 1 twisted the knife in his hand to increase the monster's injury. But just when he wanted to go one step further, 4 tentacles with bone spurs suddenly rushed towards him. Seeing this, Number 1 quickly let go of the knife in his hand and hid behind the boulder. But this time he was a little slower. A bone spur instantly pierced through Number 1's armor and went straight through Number 1's thigh. Then, the monster exerted force, lifted Number 1 high up, and slammed him heavily to the ground. Looking at the Number 1 in front of him, the monster's eyes were full of bloodthirsty murderous intent. It was not only because of the sudden attack by Number 1, but also because it suspected that his companion was also killed by Number 1's sneak attack. I wanted to torture Number 1 to vent my anger, but the severe pain in my body urged me to leave quickly. The monster then nailed Number 1 to the ground, then stretched out its remaining 3 tentacles, ready to end Number 1's life. At this critical moment, a golden light descended from the sky. Before the monster could react, the severe pain in its body made it lose its strength. It turned out that when Liu Yan swooped down this time, he did not choose to attack the monster's cervical vertebrae or head, but instead chose to stab the knife that number one had stabbed into the monster's chest. He used the huge impact force to step on the exposed handle of the knife. The huge impact force caused the heavy sword to rise instantly, cutting off most of the monster's organs and blood vessels. Seeing that the monster had lost its strength, Liu Yan did not stop attacking. While quickly stirring the heavy sword, he continuously spit out several fireballs at the hole in the wound. The fireball exploded instantly after entering the monster's body. The huge damage accompanied by the burning of the golden flame soon made the monster completely lose consciousness. "Can you still walk?" Seeing number one directly pull out the bone spur from his leg and stand up shakily, Liu Yan asked hurriedly. Number one looked down at the wound on his leg and quickly stopped the bleeding. He nodded and said, "It's okay. I can walk." "Liu Yan, that's good. In that case, let's go quickly. I just saw a large group of people going up the mountain." "From which direction?" "East." "Okay, let's go from the west." As he spoke, number one took back the black crystal from the boulder and prepared to drag the monster's corpse forward. "No, you are injured. It's too slow to walk like this." Seeing this, Liu Yan hurriedly stopped him. Number one looked at Liu Yan and asked, "Do you have a solution?" "There's a cliff not far to the right. Although I can't make it fly, I can still glide with it for a distance. As long as we glide with it to the foot of the mountain, the rest will be much easier." Liu Yan quickly recounted his plan. After hearing this, number one thought about it and then agreed with his idea. After cleaning up the traces of the battlefield, especially the blood left behind by himself, soon, number one dragged the monster's corpse to the cliff that Liu Yan mentioned. "I leave it to you." After putting the monster's body away, number one turned around and went down the mountain from the other side. Liu Yan grabbed the monster's corpse tightly and jumped up from the cliff. Not long after, the rescue team finally arrived. After everyone paid a solemn salute to the two fallen soldiers, they sent people to gather the troops. "This was a mistake in our assessment. I will apologize to my superiors afterwards." At this time, the officer who issued the task to a small team stood up and bowed deeply to Chun-Yi and others. "It's too early to talk about this now. The most urgent task is to kill the monster first." Chun-Yi is not thinking about these things now. He just wants to avenge his brother as soon as possible. Soon the rescue team left a small team to clean up the battlefield, and the others followed Chun-Yi and others in pursuit. Following the blood trail, the group soon reached the cliff. Looking at the high cliff below, the group fell into deep confusion. According to the description of Chun-Yi and others, the monster had no wings and could not fly at all. But now the bloodstains have disappeared in front of the cliff. It's impossible that the monster committed suicide by jumping off the cliff.
No.
In addition to the bloodstains, there is also a set of suspicious footprints, and there are also traces of heavy objects being dragged. Soon someone discovered that something was wrong with the traces on the ground and found the footprints left by number one. It looks a bit like human footprints, but something doesn't seem right. Someone who was proficient in footprint analysis squatted down and took a closer look, but was still confused. "Send some people to search under the cliff, and the rest of you to look along the blood trail to see if there are other clues." Soon the commander of the rescue team gave the order. So the rescue team was divided into two. One group found a way down the mountain to search, and the other group returned the same way to look for clues. After number one and Liu Yan succeeded, they quickly joined forces to bring the monster's corpse to reunite with Bai Ye. Fortunately, Bai Ye had the foresight to let Liu Yan drive the pickup truck, otherwise it would not have been able to fit the two monster corpses. Due to official intervention, Bai Ye and others did not dare to stay for long. After making good disguises, they drove back along the same route. While the vehicle is moving, after listening to number one's story, Bai Ye narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. "Monster? 2 lines, 3 lines?" Monsters should be the official name for those monsters, and if nothing unexpected happens, 2-line and 3-line should be the official classification of monsters. But how does the official divide the monster levels? Bai Ye couldn't help but start thinking about what was so special about the monsters he had seen. By the way, my lord, I found a strange thing in the head of one of the monsters, and Lu Yan had a strange reaction to it. Number 1 said as he took out a black crystal from his body and handed it to Bai Ye. Bai Ye took the black crystal and suddenly a desire emerged in his heart. His mind subconsciously told him that this thing would be good for him. 2 lines. Bai Ye suppressed the throbbing in his heart and soon discovered that there were 2 mysterious lines on the black crystal. Could this be the basis for the 2-striped monster? Does the other monster have this thing in its mind? Bai Ye turned and looked at Number 1 and asked, I haven't seen it, so I'm not sure. Number 1 shook his head and said. After observing for a while, Bai Ye suppressed the urge to swallow it whole and put the black crystal away. I'll try Lu Yan when I get back and see what happens. Bai Ye. By the way, you did a great job in this operation. I will give you a corresponding reward when we return. Thank you, Lord. ×2. After wandering around, Bai Ye and his group did not return to the city, but came to an old factory. This factory has been abandoned for a long time, and there are few families around. So Bai Ye rented it and used it as a temporary gathering point. After getting off the car, Bai Ye asked Number 1 to drag the bodies of the 2 monsters out of the car. Then he had Number 1 chop open the big monster's head with a knife. My lord, I found it. Soon, Number 1 split the monster's head open and took out a black crystal from it. Bai Ye took it immediately and checked it in his palm. As expected, he found 3 mysterious patterns on it. In other words, the level of this monster is a 3-line monster. I don't know what pattern the humanoid monster I encountered had. Bai Ye wiped the blood stains off the black crystal and put it away. Bai Ye then used the extraction skill on the 2 monster corpses and obtained 2 balls of black essence liquid. After collecting the origin of the 2-line monster, Bai Ye handed the other origin to Number 1. Swallow it, Bai Ye ordered. Number 1 didn't hesitate at all when he heard this, and swallowed the essence of the monster in front of him directly. Seeing this, Bai Ye quickly activated the fusion skill on Number 1 to avoid any accidents. Soon, Number 1 felt a familiar pain in his body. However, due to his previous experience, Number 1 did not scream. Instead, he fell down, curled up his body, and gritted his teeth to avoid fainting. As time went by, some black lines slowly appeared on the light blue armor of Number 1, adding a bit of mystery to Number 1. Then, 6 black bone spurs slowly sprouted from Number 1's back, and then gradually transformed into tentacles over 5 meters long. But compared to the monsters on the ground, Number 1's tentacles are thinner, and each tentacle is covered with a layer of exoskeleton. Half an hour later, Number 1 successfully completed the evolution, and the injury on his leg was also healed. Number 1 stood there, feeling the power in his body. He had a hunch that he could kill the 2-mark monster alone. But after recalling the strength of the 3-line monster, Number 1 felt that his own strength was still a little lacking. As Number 1 was checking the changes in his body, he suddenly felt a strange energy in his chest. So he tried to mobilize this energy. The next second, a light blue light lit up, and the armor on Number 1 quickly disappeared, and the 6 tentacles behind him quickly retracted into his body. After a while, Number 1 returned to his human form. Looking at his hands, Number 1 couldn't help but look a little dazed. You have a dual form too? Seeing this, Bai Ye on the opposite side looked at him in surprise and asked quickly. Number 1 quickly came to his senses after hearing this and answered Bai Ye's question. My lord, I can feel that most of my strength is concentrated here, and I can mobilize it at any time. Number 1 pointed to a spot on his chest and explained to Bai Ye. After saying that, Number 1 controlled the power in his chest to release it, and in the blink of an eye, his armor and tentacles grew back. It seems that this is really a problem with the origin of the monster. Bai Ye touched his chin and muttered thoughtfully. However, even though he also absorbed the essence of the monster, why didn't he have a dual form but could use his abilities directly? Is it because that monster is special, or is it because of that red crystal? After thinking about it for a while, Bai Ye really couldn't think of an answer, so he simply put the whole question aside for the time being. Lu Yan, this is for you. Try to see if you can absorb it. Bai Ye took out the black crystal of the two-line monster and threw it to Lu Yan. Lu Yan took the black crystal, felt it for a while, and then threw it directly into his mouth. When the black crystal entered Lu Yan's mouth, it quickly turned into a ball of liquid and flowed into Lu Yan's stomach. The next second, Lu Yan felt a surge of energy in his body, which gathered towards his chest. Stimulated by the huge energy, Lu Yan subconsciously changed his form, spread his wings, and golden flames rose. Then, the golden flame on Lu Yan's body seemed to be doused with kerosene, becoming increasingly intense and hot. In the end, Lu Yan turned into a man of fire and stood quietly there. Are you okay? Seeing this, Bai Ye quickly asked. My lord, I'm fine. I feel very well now. There was a hint of excitement in Lu Yan's tone, and it was obvious that he had indeed gained considerable benefits. After a while, the golden flame on Lu Yan's body gradually dissipated, and the temperature around him also dropped. After the golden flames completely dissipated, Lu Yan opened his eyes with a look of regret. Unfortunately, it's still a little short. What's missing? Bai Ye asked puzzledly. Lu Yan, I feel like I'm just a little bit short of energy, and my strength will be able to rise to a higher level. Rank? Do you mean realm? Bai Ye said thoughtfully after hearing this. You can say that. Lu Yan nodded when he heard that. What about you? Did you feel it? After thinking about it, Bai Ye turned to look at number 1 and asked. Hearing this, number 1 looked at Lu Yan and said, I can feel that he and I are in the same realm, but he has more energy than me. Yes, I can feel it too. Lu Yan nodded in response. Compared to the monsters, how many levels do you have now? Bai Ye thought for a moment and continued to ask. 2 lines, a little short of 3 lines. Lu Yan said after recalling. Then can you feel my realm? Bai Ye said, pointing at himself. Lu Yan and number 1 heard this, felt it carefully, and then shook their heads. I'm sorry, my lord. I don't feel any energy fluctuations from you. After confirming again and again, number 1 spoke slowly. After hearing this, Lu Yan also nodded, indicating that he didn't feel it either. No? How could there be none? Bai Ye frowned, closed his eyes and felt it again, but in the end, he didn't feel the energy that number 1 mentioned. No. Giant force. Bai Ye quickly thought of something and activated his giant strength skill. This time, Bai Ye successfully felt a subtle energy fluctuation in his body. Although it was very weak, it did exist. Then, Bai Ye looked at number 1 and Lu Yan and soon felt the energy fluctuations from them. However, from the energy fluctuations, Bai Ye felt that number 1 and Lu Yan had much more energy than himself. But from a feeling perspective, Bai Ye felt that the 2 of them did not pose much of a threat to him. What about now? Can you feel the energy fluctuations in my body now? After thinking for a moment, Bai Ye asked the 2 again. After hearing this, number 1 and Lu Yan carefully felt it again, but still shook their heads. I didn't feel it. They both shook their heads. Still not feeling it? Bai Ye felt the energy in his body again, somewhat unconvinced. Although it was very weak, it was indeed there. How can I not feel it? Number 1, come here and fight me. After thinking for a moment, Bai Ye turned and ordered number 1. Yes. Number 1 knew that Bai Ye was not an ordinary person, so he nodded without hesitation. Soon, number 1 got into position and threw a punch with all his might, while Bai Ye also used his great strength to meet his punch with a powerful punch. Crack. There was only a crisp sound, as if something broke. Lu Yan, who was standing by, couldn't help but widen his eyes at the scene in front of him. After the blow, number 1's right arm fell down weakly, the armor on his fist was almost broken, and a little blood fell through the fingers. Despite the pain in his hand like a broken bone, number 1 did not say a word, but just looked at Bai Ye silently. Unlike the injury of number 1, Bai Ye was injured after exchanging punches with number 1. Although there was redness, swelling, and broken skin on his hands, The blood had not yet seeped out, and Bai Ye's powerful self-healing ability healed the injuries on his hands to their original state. How long will it take for your hand to heal? Bai Ye asked after looking at the injury on number 1's hand. Number 1 has integrated the essence of the starfish and possesses extremely strong self-healing abilities, so Bai Ye is not worried. Number 1 felt the recovery speed of his arm, thought for a moment, and said, "About half an hour."
No?
Such a serious injury healed in half an hour? Upon hearing this, Lu Yen, who was standing by, widened his eyes and said in disbelief. Number 1 didn't explain after hearing this. He walked to the faucet beside him and washed the blood off his hands. "My lord, I also want this ability." Lu Yen looked at number 1's arm, whose bleeding had stopped, with great envy, and pleaded with Bai Ye with longing eyes. "I'll consider it again after you make a significant contribution in the future." Bai Ye waved his hand and said, "Yes, my lord. Please give me your orders." Upon hearing this, Lu Yen immediately stood at attention and saluted. After number 1 came back after washing his hands, Bai Ye asked, "After that punch just now, what level do you think my strength is at?" "It should be above 3 lines, stronger than this 3-line monster." After recalling for a moment, number 1 pointed at the corpse of the 3-striped monster on the ground and said. Bai Ye nodded thoughtfully after hearing this, and he felt somewhat confident about his own strength. "Okay, you two keep the bodies of these 2 monsters safe. We will go to Yueching tomorrow." After saying this, Bai Ye got in the car, while number 1 and Lu Yen began to deal with the bodies skillfully. Yueching is the hometown of Bai Ye's target Fangchun, a 3rd-tier city. After Fangchun was confirmed to have no effect on the treatment, he was taken home by his family. Since Fangchun's family is well off, he usually lives in a professional nursing home and is cared for by professionals. Yueching Renai Sanatorium. Because the weather was nice today, the nurse pushed Fangchun in a wheelchair to take a walk in the garden. Ever since Fangchun became paralyzed, he has been silent, with a cold and gloomy face all day long, and an aura of keep away from strangers all around him. So as long as the weather is good, the nurse will push him out to relax. When the nurse pushed Fangchun to a secluded bush of flowers, the cell phone in his pocket suddenly rang. "Hello. Shaoling, come to the lawn quickly. There are several patients here who have problems and need help."
Huh?
"Okay, I'll be right there." Shaoling hung up the phone immediately after hearing this, squatted down, and looked at Fangchun. "I'm sorry, Fangchun. My colleague has an emergency and needs my help. Why don't you just look at the flowers here for a while? I'll be back soon." Shaoling asked Fangchun with a smile. Hearing this, Fangchun glanced at her sideways, blinked, and said nothing. "Thanks." Having taken care of Fangchun for so long, Shaoling had already known some of Fangchun's hints, so she quickly expressed her gratitude. Afterwards, Shaoling considerately pushed Fangchun to a shady place, and then ran to support him. After Shaoling left, Fangchun was alone, staring blankly at a flower, not knowing what he was thinking. At this moment, Fangchun, who was in a daze, suddenly felt the wheelchair start to move. But he knew very well that the person pushing the wheelchair was not Shaoling. Since his neck couldn't turn, Fangchun couldn't see who was behind him and could only let him push him away from the flower bed. After a while of silence, Fangchun was pushed to a remote pavilion. And in the pavilion, there was already a person waiting there. "Nice to meet you, Fangchun." Seeing number 1 pushing Fangchun over, Bai Ye stood up and greeted them with a smile. Looking at the stranger in front of him whom he had never seen before, Fangchun couldn't help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief because he did not sense any hostility from Bai Ye. "You guys did that?" Fangchun did not respond, but asked back preemptively. "It's just some laxatives. Nothing will go wrong." Bai Ye replied with a smile. In order to meet Fangchun alone, Bai Ye had no choice but to resort to this last resort. However, the targets of poisoning have been screened, so there will be no problems at all. After listening to Bai Ye's explanation, Fangchun's expression eased a little. Then he looked at Bai Ye and said directly, "Just get to the point and tell us your purpose." Fangchun looked at Bai Ye calmly, with no interest in chatting more. "Okay." Bai Ye smiled, and agreed to Fong Chen's request. I would like to invite you to help me with something. In other words, help me do research in the area that you are best at. Bai Ye said sincerely. However, Fong Chen was not moved by Bai Ye's sincerity. Instead, his eyes quickly turned cold. He felt that Bai Ye was not inviting him, but humiliating him. After all, who would want a disabled person who can only move his brain to do research? However, since he was still in the hands of Bai Ye and others, Fong Chen could only suppress the anger in his heart. For this kind of work, I recommend you to go to academician Zhao Jingji or Professor Wu Tianda. They are both top figures in biology. Fong Chen introduced Bai Ye with a cold and kind tone. No, I want you. Bai Ye shook his head and said word by word. Are you kidding, sir? What's the point of crippling me? Fong Chen was so angry that he laughed, and he sneered at himself. What if I could get you back on your feet? Bai Ye didn't care about Fong Chen's attitude and immediately threw out his biggest chip. Stand up again? After hearing Bai Ye's words, Fong Chen's sneer gradually disappeared, and he looked at Bai Ye in disbelief. The greater the hope, the greater the despair. How I wished I could return to normal and stand in the laboratory again. But failure after failure completely extinguished the hope in his heart. Finally, he could only leave the hospital and come to this sanatorium with endless despair. Can this man really cure me? Looking at Bai Ye's confident eyes, Fong Chen had an absurd idea in his mind. But he quickly rejected this idea.
Ha! I was also stupid.
The best doctors and the most advanced medical equipment in the country couldn't cure me. Now, a random person shows up and I almost believe him. Fong Chen shook his head in self-mockery, his eyes suddenly dimmed. Knowing that Fong Chen would not easily believe it, Bai Ye did not waste any words and directly took out a knife. In front of Fong Chen, he cut a cut on his arm. The wound was so deep that the flesh inside could be seen directly, and blood began to seep out rapidly. Fong Chen was shocked when he saw this scene. He thought Bai Ye was trying to intimidate him into agreeing. But the following scene made Fong Chen begin to doubt his own worldview. The deep wound on Bai Ye's arm began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few seconds, Fong Chen watched Bai Ye's arm complete the process of stopping bleeding, healing, and removing scars. This is impossible. Fong Chen stared at Bai Ye's arm in disbelief. If he could move, he would have stepped forward to grab Bai Ye's arm and examined it carefully. Now you believe that I'm not lying. Bai Ye took out a few wet tissues from his pocket and wiped the blood while speaking to Fong Chen. The blood is real blood, and the wounds are real wounds. If he didn't believe in his own professional knowledge, Fong Chen would even suspect that he was hallucinating. Is what you just said true? After a moment's silence, Fong Chen asked cautiously. Really? As long as you agree to join us, I can help you stand up again. Bai Ye answered with certainty. Fong Chen fell silent again after hearing this. Although he wanted to stand up again, he also had his own bottom line. He will not work for the enemy country or evil forces for his own selfish interests. Can you tell me who you are? After forcibly suppressing the impulse in his heart, Fong Chen looked directly into Bai Ye's eyes with a dagger-like gaze and asked, Have you seen the monster video that went viral online recently? Bai Ye asked irrelevantly. I have. When she has nothing to do, Nurse Xiaoling will use the TV screen to watch short videos for him. He has also seen many videos about monsters. What if I tell you that those monsters are real? Would you believe it? Bai Ye continued. Fong Chen was not too surprised to hear this, because judging from the authenticity of those videos, he already had some guesses in his mind. So you are here for? Fong Chen paused. To survive. Bai Ye took over the conversation directly. Those monsters are called demons by the officials, and they are clearly divided into different levels of strength. The levels of the demons that have appeared so far are not high, but their strength is very strong. Even a well-equipped team may not be able to defeat a three-striped monster. It is conceivable that if higher-level monsters appear in the future, what kind of force will be needed to fight them? At this point, Bai Ye's tone became much lower. Although our country is safe and strong, it is ultimately impossible to take care of all aspects. A good blacksmith must have strong tools himself, so I won't pin my hopes on other people or even the country. After saying that, Bai Ye stopped talking and just looked at Fang Chen quietly, waiting for his reply. Fang Chen was silent for a long time after hearing this, and finally made up his mind and looked at Bai Ye. I'll join. Hearing Fang Chen's answer, Bai Ye smiled again. Then Bai Ye stood up, walked to Fang Chen, took Fang Chen's hand and shook it. Welcome to join us. May I ask, what is the name of our organization? How big has it grown now? Fang Chen looked at his numb right hand speechlessly and asked Bai Ye curiously. The name of our organization is Shanghai, and as for the size, there are 4 of us including you. Bai Ye smiled unnaturally and replied, 10. 4. Bai Ye's firm tone broke Fang Chen's last fantasy. It's over, it feels sloppy. Fang Chen suddenly felt like he had strayed into a den of thieves. As if seeing what Fang Chen was thinking, Bai Ye quickly explained, don't be afraid. Although our organization is just starting out, think about it from another perspective. When our organization becomes bigger and stronger, won't you be a veteran of the organization? Although we are outnumbered now, we still have strength. Show it off, number 1, Bai Ye said, giving orders to number 1 beside him. Upon hearing this, number 1 took off his short-sleeved shirt and began to transform. In just a few seconds, Fang Chen watched a human being transform into a monster covered in armor with 6 tentacles behind him. In order not to attract attention, number 1 only showed Fang Chen for about half a minute before turning back into a human.